So welcome to the San Mateo County Design Review Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, November 14, 2024, and it is now 1:34 p.m. This hearing consists of 3 projects and is being audio recorded. For better recording quality and the orderliness of the meeting, please put your phones on silent, avoid side conversations in the audience, and wait for my prompt before speaking on an item. There are 2 opportunities for the public to speak, including a public comment period for matters on the agenda and a separate public comment session for each project on the agenda. For the fairness and orderliness of this meeting, please limit your speech to 3 minutes or less, and you will be respectfully asked to stop speaking after 3 minutes. The Design Review Committee's decision for items 2 and 3 today, if any, will only be in a form of a recommendation regarding project compliance with design review guidelines and standards, and not the final decision on the project, which will take place at a later date. And the Design Review Committee's decision for item 4, if any, are appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 working days by filing an appeal and paying the applicable filing fee. And as a reminder, the CDRC does not review matters related to zoning standards, local coastal policies, or the general plan, and will only review projects based on the design review guidelines and standards. So with that, next we will move on to roll call. Mark Stagmeyer. Here. John Stedman. Julian Martinez. April Bingham.
Here.
Mochi Porter.
Yes.
Mark Ding.
Here.
And James Bennington.
I'm here.
Okay, with that, I turn it over to the chair for the chairperson's report, and I will give that up.
As I always say, our mission statement, the Coastside Design Review Committee, CDRC, is appointed by the Board of Supervisors to ensure the new development is compatible with physical settings of the site and visual character of the neighborhood, and provide a platform for neighborhood residents to communicate their concerns for the communities of Montclair, Moss Beach, and Elgin. In old business, we're still working on the story poles again, and I guess we're gonna have some discussion at the end of this hearing. There was some public outcry or whatever in Exeter, Montana. I did put it on the chair report regarding, she sort of brought everything to head on it all. It's yeah, I can remember who it's done by, but it's in there, and there's a link to see more of like what the timeline, what has been for it. I won't go into reading it all because I want to see the secret thing. The alternate, I want to say at some point discuss alternates when we have alternates taking over positions for other people. And it all bears down on a whole bunch of like the history of things. And it is a personal thing right now because of what happened, but hi Jim. Good afternoon. Like, we are not privy to the result, I mean, the letter of acceptance or rejection or continuance, the rest of the board doesn't get ever. And it's
Oh,
based
just
on we
the
don't
people
get
who
it.
voted.
Right, on anything,
Right.
voted or whatever the issues were. Like, for,
I just make sure I understand.
like the list of conditions of
The decision
approval.
letter, not just the letter of recommendation from the chair
Yeah.
of the item, but like the final decision letter.
Final decision letter.
I believe we copy the voting members.
We can make sure we do that
letters of
moving forward.
decision.
Yeah.
It's just
I
the
mean,
voting
with
members,
some-
it's not everyone, and then if you happen to speak on.
So
the item.
if somebody's continued, somebody can go back and read, what it was, not just, just the items, but kind of get the history. Sort of.
So if it's continued, then there's a finding letter that comes
Right.
from the community rep who's the chair.
To the applicant.
No,
to the
you
staff.
guys, usually you send it out to other people who voted on the item, like, someone writes it up in draft. They send it out to Moshi and whoever the rep was, the rep sending it out, so it's really just to Moshi. And then, everyone agrees on how the write-up, And then that gets sent to the applicant, but it gets sent in draft, perhaps final.
Right, then it's edited by staff.
No, we kind of just send it out.
Mark, if you will, I think maybe this situation you're talking about is, when the original item comes up, it's one person on the committee reviews it, and then when it comes back,
It's a different person.
Yeah, different person.
Oh, that's
That
what
person
you're talking
doesn't see the, yeah,
Continuation letter. We
Right.
usually always try, if something's coming back after being continued, we include the continuation letter in the package that's posted online.
on the website.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, don't we,
Yeah.
as a matter of.
Mhm.
He might have, I mean, so far. I mean, I think it did.
We try to include it always,
But
so
I-
that, because you guys use that as your baseline for.
But we
checking.
should, as a group, try to dig into the history of, like, not just the last meeting, but maybe the previous, if it's been extended. I mean, just
Well,
to
it
know,
just means that those issues were addressed.
and, yeah, if they have been, yeah. It was
So you
My
want,
case
you
is
want
more
every
particular.
continuation?
just to be more, I guess I'm trying to bring everybody, like, we're getting way far away, we're not getting far away from this. But I've noticed that people are taking, it seems like their own personal views on how they interpret this. And we're kind of deviating, I think, a little bit. I mean, I just noticed it the last couple of meetings, just listening in on how personal views. I mean, oh, that's fine, but it's not fine if it's in the book, so it's,
I mean, it's a little, I mean, the book is
I mean, you
kind of
can't-
arguably a little subjective, so it's in their opinion that, say, scale is compatible with the rest of the community, or, I mean, it's not a matter of like,
well, we represent the community, we're not, it's not about our views, it's the community in this.
but it's also subjective, perception of whether the scale is appropriate or not.
Right, I mean.
And
Sure.
one person's take on that might be different.
But you have no way of arguing that part. I
It's
mean,
hard to, because there isn't a actual like hard threshold for like, okay, this is
No,
fine, but this is
It's
too
just a
much.
way, maybe just to talk about, figure out how to make that, work.
Is that more the issue, the scale issue?
Because like, so I appealed the thing, we went down to the
Yeah.
county, it was a waste of time. It was like, oh, we just do what the CDRC says, I mean, we all went there for, you spoke, I spoke, everybody spoke.
didn't say that.
That's what they said. No, they didn't say to you, they just said,
No, we always, no, staff always works,
no, I get
In the
that, I
report.
understand.
but the PC makes their own independent decision
Yeah,
as to whether they're gonna follow staff's recommendation.
Oh.
After hearing everything that the appellant has said, everything that the applicant has said, you guys laid it out really, really well. But like I said, it is subjective, and in their minds, they had to figure out which side of the fence they were on in terms of whether they felt that the scale was too much or just fine. And everyone's got a different.
They weren't really fighting about the scale, we were fighting about the
Talking about
process.
Project.
I think we're getting too personal on it, so.
Or too specific as far as.
So.
But I have
I'll
to
move
say,
on.
that is the issue, it is subjective, and there can be disagreements regarding the same standard as far as whether somebody thinks, and it is kind of opinion until it's more like objectively written. Where it's like, well, how is that determined, whether something's.
I'd like to say something on the blue book. I think, these are the standards, right? And we're supposed to apply them. And I think it's a valuable reference. I don't know if you guys reference this on your laptops when you're sitting here,
Yeah.
but, this is the Bible to me in terms of what we need to do or how to approach things. And as long as we're all using this, together and having some kind of consistency, I think that, because it's spelled out pretty well.
Right.
It's spelled out pretty well, and I think that if the architects come in here or the builder owners come in here and you're trying to work around this too hard, then we need to call them, that's all. So maybe that's.
Do you have a specific example?
I don't think I want to bring it up,
Oh,
it's a little personal. But I will sign letters.
We're trying to make this, as you know, we're trying to make the design standards more objective,
Mhm.
so it's not so subject to opinion, so that it's applied
I understand.
consistently. Per project and not just, well, if it's one day it's Moshe, but another day it's Rebecca and you get a different call.
Well, maybe these, reviewing the results for everybody's.
I think I was failing on some of it anyway, so that's, I think I have been failing on keeping it grouped together, so maybe I'm bringing this up for my own good, so.
But yeah, the closer you stick to the findings, they started, stick to the standards.
Yeah.
In all
Stick to the
your
standard.
conditions, in all your discussions,
Mhm.
then the more, legally supported your actions are.
Yeah.
Because we don't want arbitrary use of
No,
this
no.
power
No,
on stuff that's
and
not in the
no,
book.
absolutely not.
Or we don't want to make people up either.
But I'm just concerned about the notion that we're just throwing out opinions, because, I mean, we're using this, the standards as our guidelines. I didn't feel like we needed it, but maybe that's where the example would help.
It was, it's on different things, yeah.
I like
Because
to
it's
hear-
my case, I shouldn't really talk about it.
Well,
So
there's other examples, you said the last couple of meetings,
Yeah.
so if there's other cases where you think that.
Yeah,
I'll let you just bring them.
Because it honestly.
Well, gather your thoughts.
Yeah, I will. Do this first, and I'm not easily gathering thoughts lately, and just because, so in the mission statement, I kind of brought it up into it, was adding something to the mission statement, is like, and I'm breaking into part of it, but for the neighborhood residents to communicate their concerns through the community representatives or them in person, to maybe remind people that when somebody comes up with something that they want to talk about regarding a case, in the general public, that we're listening to them. It's not just us, it's what they have to say and how it regards. And we do that a little bit, but I would say 2 meetings ago, it was just kind of shined on until I was kind of like motioning to somebody to say, something about whatever. I can't even remember the circumstance, but, and they did.
Well, sometimes,
Brought it back.
sometimes the things that we do here are pretty minor, like having people put in opaque windows or
Yeah.
clustering windows or something, but that's.
No,
part
it
of
was just a
That's
concern that
important.
somebody wanted, and everything, lots of other things were getting addressed, but they weren't being heard. So I'm just trying to, that's all. I mean, I have to write something new each month, so.
This is good. What you wrote this month is excellent. I loved it. It's great.
And the ledger from Bridget Bauer, I think you guys should look at it and try to, go through it. And then, from my friend, the Indian Chief White Eagle sent me a letter, so you can read that. Regarding our times, anyway, so I'm done with all my stuff. And because I won't see what up, our first one's 2:30.
145.
1:45.
There's a sequence.
Yeah, see,
Pretty quick.
okay,
Our first one's
so,
1:45.
yeah, I'm done, I think.
Okay.
What's the deal with secret?
We're just, you guys had asked for, there's a specific statement you have to make that is exempt per class, whatever, CEQA. And someone said last time, we don't even know what we're doing there. Can you give us a little like training on that? So I
That
just,
makes sense.
I made a short little training.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes the chairperson's report. So next, we're now opening public comment for matters that are not on the agenda. So for those attending this meeting in person, speaker forms are available on the back wall near the entrance. Please provide me with your speaker slip as soon as possible. And for those on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature to raise your hand to speak. And for those joining by phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and pressing *6 will unmute and mute your microphone. And when you hear your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number called, I will prompt you to come up to the front or unmute your account and inform you that you may begin speaking. And please state your name, address, and email address for the record. I have no speaker request forms in person. Let me check on Zoom. Okay, none on Zoom either. So I will wait a couple seconds in case there's anyone else that may want to comment.
I had a little comment that I never didn't bring up, but last time, it actually turned out to be the chairperson for the planning commission came up to speak. And I didn't ever see the timer going on, but I think she was pretty well insulted. that cause she stopped and I didn't call it like they did the next person, so.
Okay, good to
I
know.
saw her go to the back of the room and that's Lisa,
Kitchen.
Kitchen.
Yeah.
And so there was, if there's not a big crowd or something like that, we should probably be careful with that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, seeing none, Chair, please indicate if you would like to close the public
I'll
comment.
close public comment.
Okay. So now we can move on to item number 1 regarding the CEQA training.
Okay, so I kind of condensed a presentation that was given by Tim Fox, County Attorney, 4 years back. So, he had given a similar presentation. So the CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, requires local governments to consider the potential environmental effects of a project before approving it. So there's some projects that you're only making recommendations on. Those projects have additional permits, so you only have authority over the design review, so in those cases, you're doing just a recommendation. But on projects where it's just the design review permit that's needed, you're actually making a decision, so it's actually required that we make a CEQA finding. That whether it's exempt or that there's a negative declaration and it's adequate. It's very rare that you would have to be the decision maker on the neg deck. I think it's happened once that I know of.
Yeah,
the CDRC.
what is neg deck? Here, can you give?
Oh, let me,
Okay,
okay.
all right.
So,
Hey, Camille, item 4 is consideration of a permit, and there's no CEQA.
statement,
Yeah,
okay, let's add the statement.
okay.
You can add the statement. I flagged it to Louise that we need to make sure going forward that the agenda includes a statement if you all are making a decision. Okay, so staff determines, we're sorry.
Okay.
Staff determines what kind of environmental document is needed by CEQA. So sometimes for exemptions, not sometimes, for exemptions, it's a notice of exemption. But for projects that do not qualify for an exemption, it's an initial study negative declaration or an initial study mitigated negative declaration. That means mitigations are required to lessen the impact of the project to a less than significant level, because that keeps you in neg deck territory if it's less than significant or mitigated to a point that's less than significant. If there's a significant impact, then you need an EIR. So I don't know if you recall, but like say Big Wave, for instance, needed an EIR.
Mid-pen.
Mid-pen needed an EIR. So there's a significant impact. I mean, even in some projects, if they're super controversial, people want to see an EIR just to see all the issues laid out, but it may or may not end up with a significant impact. It could still be less than significant. So the process is that staff receives the application, design review application, determines the appropriate permits, in this case, design review. We determine whether the project actually qualifies for the exemption. There are actually like bounds on the exemption, like say if like the addition has to be 50% or less than the existing house. We can use that as an exemption. So in cases where we're not sure if it qualifies for an exemption, or we're pretty sure that something needs to be mitigated, staff determines that we'll do an initial study, which is a checklist of potential impacts that the project can have. That's actually from the state clearinghouse. It's like a standard checklist. Staff evaluates whether it answers to the checklist and see if there's a fair argument for a significant impact that we would need to come up with a mitigation. And sometimes that mitigation is like biological, so then we rely on a bio report. Or sometimes the impact is more geological, so we rely on a geological report or an archaeo report or a historical report. So in those instances, from the initial study checklist, if something is like, kind of like, yeah, we need more analysis, we need mitigation, we'll prepare a neg deck or mitigated negative declaration or EIR and share it with the public for CEQA. And then in the staff report, typically, these are mostly larger projects that have additional permits that go to like planning commission after design review. That have these significant impacts. So in the staff report, we'll make a recommendation as to the environmental document whether we feel it's adequate or not, and then the decision maker has to either agree with it, or maybe in light of all public comments, the environmental document missed something. So then it has to, the decision maker doesn't adopt it and tells staff to go look at, well, you really gotta look at this impact more. And then sometimes it causes a revision or recirculation.
I can, you want to take questions at the end or as?
We can do it as we go, so you don't have to.
Just two questions. The first one is, that number 5 is great. Like, I haven't seen a staff report for an item that we've had to weigh in on, or to provide a CEQA neg deck statement or not. So going forward, are we gonna be receiving those for every
No,
project?
those staff reports are only prepared for public hearings, like zoning hearing officer or planning commission or board of supervisors. So you guys wouldn't get the staff report, but say if you had to make a decision on a neg deck, we would prepare findings for you, so draft findings.
So what you're saying is a decision maker is gonna be a staff person that's an expert in that area. Is that what I'm hearing? It's not gonna be us? And you're gonna bring that, report to us.
So we don't get a report.
You don't get a staff report. It says staff report because most of these go to planning commission.
Okay, so we're.
You never get a staff report. If anything, you'll get draft findings.
Okay, are we a decision maker?
Yes. On a design review permit, a standalone design review permit, yes.
Okay, so that, it feels like that statement number 5 is in conflict with that, but.
5 is really referring more to 4, where there's like a neg deck, a mitigated neg deck or an AIR, and most of those go to the hearing. So yeah, staff report is more related to projects going to plan.
Yeah, it ties in my concern that we're asked to weigh in or be a
Yeah.
decision maker in CEQA without any environmental documents or review or checklist. At all, so that's one. The second thing is, if we look at kind of the blue book, right, are we to discuss anything environmental in this meeting? Or just literally, is this like a paper, kind of a concurrence?
So the statement, let's keep going because there's a slide on it. Okay. So the role of the CDRC in approving the environmental document. We're talking about recommendations on the design review permit where you're not the decision maker. It does not require the CDRC to take any action on CEQA, so you don't have to find that it's exempt. The decision maker of the associated permit and also the design review permit, after you make your recommendation, that the subsequent decision maker will make the CEQA finding. Most of the CDRC's decisions would just be a finding of exemption, and you're welcome to look into that critically. Such as for this next item, we'll try to identify the class of the exemption, and if you look at the exemption language and you say, this really doesn't fit, that's perfectly fair.
No,
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. But for some of the CDRC's decisions, an adoption of a neg deck or mitigated neg deck is needed. I don't know if you recall, but there was the item on 15th and East in Montera, which had a neg deck. The neg deck, the link to the neg deck was in the agenda.
Yeah.
But it needed a grading permit and it needed a CDP, so you weren't
It was regarding the sewage.
It was regarding, there's 2 like creeks nearby, I don't know if you recall, and then they were doing a brand new road, so any road extensions always require a CDP.
Well, it's actually the case I was thinking of, but it's mostly they were gonna eject or pump 400 feet of sewage, which is like a catastrophe, sort of. I mean, if you're environmentalist, because with those repairing corridors right there in the 2 creeks, 400 feet of sewage under pressure. Like, who's gonna take it? I mean, we're having to take care of bioswales and things
Yeah,
out there, and then is there anybody monitoring this?
there's
What
probably a
happened?
maintenance agreement involved in that, but that's kind of analysis.
Like that, that's why.
That's the analysis, like,
Right.
yeah, there's a maintenance agreement, they're required to inspect it every year to make sure it's running properly.
Mhm.
It'll be recorded, usually these maintenance agreements are recorded on the deed, they're part of the chain of title. So that kind of response analysis, like say if you were the planning commission, say that, because it is going to the planning commission. Say the planning commission had that question, then we would come back with that, and then hopefully that would mitigate the concern regarding the sewage adequately.
But if everybody just passing off, who does that land on when it? Well, I was thinking if it did have, something did happen, it falls back on somebody. How did this ever get passed? But who is that Montero Water and Sewer that says that's fine? Or does NEGDEC,
Yeah, imagine,
does CEQA
so
actually
it's
look at that?
DPW, because all those lines are in the right of way, right?
Yeah.
So it's on DPW, Montero, and then on the owner, if they choose not to maintain it, even though it's on the deed. I mean, we're getting to it, but you understand, so basically there's a CEQA, there can be a CEQA document where you're not making a decision, but you know of its existence. And you're not delving into it because you're not the decision maker, the final decision maker, you're just making a recommendation. So many projects like that will come through the CDRC where there'll be a deck or a mitigating deck, but you won't be making the final decision. But in one instance that I can recall, the CDRC was actually responsible for adopting
You brought it to our attention.
the neg deck, and we gave you a training beforehand to prepare you for it. We also gave you draft findings, so like, similar to the planning commission, we give the planning commission draft findings on the staff report, and we write them all up. And if they, if they agree with it, they just read off those findings.
Right.
But if they don't agree with it, and they're welcome to, they're independent, judgment makers. So, they can say, well, we need more analysis on it. Sewage injection pump.
Okay, sorry, you continue.
Okay, so most projects are exempt from SECA. The ones that weren't, some examples was, there was one in Seal Cove that you all reviewed that had an egg deck on Cypress. And then that one on 15th and East. And, the 15th and East had a riparian area issue. So these are the kinds of things that
Hey,
typically
Gail,
trigger.
You just said that for that project, they had a negative declaration
Yeah.
in neg deck. I don't recall that's the case. I think you guys were asking us to make a neg deck. Declaration.
No stats.
Project, we kind of shut.
There's an effort.
Oh, sorry, no, not that one, the Seal Cove.
Seal Cove, there was a draft egg deck.
Okay,
Line.
okay,
That
okay,
was
yeah,
adopted.
it's, I find it like, it's the projects where we don't have literally any environmental documents that we're asked to almost administratively pass through.
It's the exemption. It's you have to make this finding of exemption.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what we
and then,
where you have to, it's usually a class 1, class 2, class 3.
yeah, we're asked to make a finding.
Yes.
And there's no environmental information about that project.
It's really just a statement that it complies with class 1.
Yeah,
We agreed with the county's.
yeah, if there's not an issue with the environment, then that's what we get, the neg deck, and then we forward.
Okay, so that determination is made by the staff.
Yes,
Staff.
on a great document, whether it's a notice of exemption or like that.
Okay.
So, yeah, the levels are, there's another CEQA exemption called not a project, but you'll rarely see those, we rarely see those. There's a statutory exemption from CEQA, so building permits are not subject to the CEQA, whether there's an impact or not impact. Because, ministerial projects such as building permit applications are always exempt, they're statutorily
Yeah, I
exempt.
think the mid-pen was a statutory. Due to the change in California, like for low-income housing.
It became a ministerial project.
Yes.
So there's also things that are not statutorily exempt, but categorically exempt. So you have to associate with a category, a class, type of project that the state has said, well, these kinds of projects don't really cause harm to the environment. So those are the ones that you see, class 1, class 2, class 3 typically.
Too small, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the categorical exemptions that we're talking about here. It's 15301, 15302, and 15303. The last number is the class number.
Oh,
1, 2, 3. So if it's an addition, it's a modification to existing facilities. If it's a brand new house, it's class 2, which is replacement or reconstruction. And, that's when that's like where some house gets removed and another house gets built. But if it's a brand new house on an empty lot, then it's class 3. And that's assuming it meets all this, like, the exemptions are worded very specifically, so you can read this example here. It says, the statement would read in the agenda, and sorry we missed this one, that the project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 5303, and it would be class 3, sorry. It would be 15301, not 30. it'd be 301. Class 1, relating to additions to existing structures, provided that the addition will not result in an increase of more than 10,000 square feet. If the project is in an area where all public services are available to allow for maximum development permissible in the general plan, and B, the area in which the project is located is not environmentally sensitive. So sometimes there's criteria within the class. For it to fit in that class, it has to meet the criteria. And in this case,
Is that 10,000 square feet of affected area? Or that's square feet of a?
the addition itself,
project, huh?
the addition itself, but it has to meet all the
10,000
sub
square
criteria. Yeah, that's one of class, that's one example of a class 1. There's another example of class 1 where it's, not more than 50% of the existing structure.
Okay.
So, but if you need to go over 50%, then it triggers this 10,000 square feet, but it can't be an environmentally sensitive area. So it would have kicked out the
Yeah,
15th
I mean,
Street
it's,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it kicks out projects where they're next to some type of sensitive habitat. So when there is an initial study, it shows that there's a significant impact to the environment, it's incumbent on staff to come up with mitigation measures, pulling from the reports submitted by report to report, so on, and we come up with, mitigation measures as conditions of approval that are approved with, along with the project, to make sure that the impacts remain less than significant. So CEQA actually requires the decision maker to make 1, 2, 3, 4, four very specific findings regarding the neg deck and its adequacy. So I just put that there for reference, it is a lot. It's a lot to take in when you guys are mostly focused on design review, and we will prep you, we will train you, we'll make sure you've had time to review the neg deck. We'll make sure that you're familiar with the findings required by CEQA to adopt the neg deck. We'll provide you draft findings to the decision maker, whether that's the planning commission or the CDRC, to help you evaluate whether the document is adequately addresses all concerns. The public will also have like comments on whatever they think, an impact that hasn't been mitigated or hasn't been addressed enough. I think that's it.
Does each planner just do their own,
Neg deck.
neg deck?
Yes.
Oh.
And they make the findings of exemption. Sometimes sometimes the finding of exemptions aren't like a perfect fit. And we have to go to the county attorney and just be like,
Yeah,
does this fit right? So we try to do that. And then, of course, we have to be able to support that in front of you,
right.
that it's exempt or that this.
Some people are gonna be better at.
I'm curious about, do you remember the one where, there was a big concern about the stream running, like the natural water source?
Yeah, I think that was last month.
Was it
That was-
last
that
month?
was-
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a design review recommendation for permit.
It was a recommendation
Yeah,
only,
so that's
so
why
in
there's-
that case, like, we didn't have any CEQA information, right?
Yeah, well, there was a link to the SUPA report, but not the staff written draft findings.
That's 15 Street.
Because we weren't a decision maker.
Exactly.
Oh, it's one, I think it was one in Moss Beach that you talked about, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
that was
so,
Moss Beach one.
No,
You know.
was it Montero or Moss Beach?
I thought it was Moss Beach.
The one with the road through down the driveway down the road?
it's the one out by the distillery where it got all flooded, right?
Oh,
It's
right.
the one with
right,
the
right.
water pools, where they brought all the
Right.
pictures of the water pool.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's Moss
Yeah.
Beach Cypress, that's it.
Moss Beach Cypress. Yeah.
Yeah, so here, on page 6 of our standards, there's discussion for that. There's rules, there's standards, and there's examples of how to resolve it. And so we do have, guidance in this book that can assist us beyond what CEQA,
Yeah, there's some overlap.
Yeah.
there's some overlap.
And trees, CEQA talks about trees too.
Yeah.
CEQA talks about being in a design review district. CEQA talks about being in a scenic corridor, like how visible you are from Highway
Sure.
1.
All of these things.
So there's some overlap.
I'm
Okay.
familiar with it from the city, but
Mhm.
the thing about these standards is this standard in our book is if CEQA doesn't cover it, or if we don't think CEQA's covering it, we can use these standards to ask planning, I guess. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And ask you for more information.
I got it, okay. That's good to know. Because I was under the impression that if CEQA didn't cover it, then we didn't get to say anything about that.
Well, that's in your standards, it's within your authority.
Okay.
That's the beauty of, I haven't finished reviewing this the last time I read cover to cover when I was here years ago. I'm in the middle of it still. It's valuable. Hope for us to keep familiar with it.
If you read it cover to cover, you sit here.
No, I don't want to do that. You can do that.
So the only one on today's agenda where you're actually making a decision is item 4
Mhm.
at 3:15. So we'll make sure we have the correct class identified.
Okay.
So that one has to go back.
No, you can still make the
Can
finding.
we just quote that last paragraph right there, the 10,000 square feet one?
No, this is the brand new, so you can't use that one.
Oh,
It would
okay.
be this
So
one.
this,
We have to, Louis will come up with another one.
Yeah.
it's an addition.
Yeah.
Number 4?
So 15,302.
I think that's
It is an
accurate.
addition.
Oh, it is an addition, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
It's 303, isn't
Oh,
it?
yeah, maybe you could use that. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, 4 is an
Well,
addition.
check to see if that works for you.
Okay.
If it works for the project, then.
Okay.
We can use it.
This is very helpful. for us to-
Thank you, Camille.
Any additional questions on this item?
Just, I captured a note that, the design review guidelines, I know that they're undergoing a review now. I'd love a tie into the CEQA determination, basically just, even if it's a quick blurb that, that we're for exactly what you said, for design review permits or permit, approvals, the CDRC, it's within their purview to provide a statement. So there, currently, I didn't see a tie-in. There is a description in there about streams and placing a house and stuff, but it doesn't really talk about CEQA. Yeah. I mean,
It's just
We're
that
connected.
first line, where it says, the county and its decision makers have to make a finding of compliance with CEQA prior to any decision. So
Yeah,
it's in that presentation, it's on the first statement of the first line.
yeah, but it's not in the blue book. There's nothing in the blue
CEQA
book.
is a state law. I don't know, it's not,
Well,
this is only for relative to the design review chapter.
It's more like a through line to make sure that we are within our, scope or bounds to provide that statement. So this presentation that you have is that, what's the through line? Is the through line basically that the
Any
state
permit
regulation that a decision maker, which includes the CDRC, must,
Yeah.
must get into this.
It's a state law that any county decision maker, whether it's staff, CDRC, PC, VHO, has to make a finding relative to either exemption from CEQA or compliance with CEQA, prior to making a decision. So we wouldn't sprinkle it in every so this is one permit, this is relative to the design review permit. Wouldn't necessarily need to amend all of our regulations to include that.
Okay, I just don't want it to be like the story poll thing where it's like, oh, that's actually not within, like just, as, the county attorney.
state
reviews
law.
it and ensures that we can do it.
Yeah, completely required to do so, as with any county decision letter. If you look back at old decision letters, you'll see that there's a finding for CEQA in every single decision letter, but it wasn't expressly stated at the hearing. And I think what we're trying to get organized about is making that finding verbally and not just assume the CDRC is okay with CEQA.
Well, there's things in this presentation, like staff will prepare a report for, right?
Yeah.
That's not in our, what do we reference in presentation that, hey, for this particular item, we didn't receive a staff. item.
Well, it also said that I'll give you draft findings.
Yeah,
So we'll
and
give you draft findings.
Okay, so is this kind of entered into like what we do, this presentation here, or is this just, this feels a little unofficial. I appreciate the review and this presentation, but I just want to make sure that that's our review to do. Yeah, that's,
It's not even your purview, it's a requirement for making a decision on a county permit.
okay, but that's a requirement, right? But where's the requirement that a staff must provide a report to us on the environmental things? Is that somewhere other than this presentation?
You can make findings yourself, but staff is supporting you as a decision maker by drafting findings for you, so all you have to do is agree or disagree with it.
Yeah, just.
Rather than like writing every word of a brand new finding, so we just, as with any decision maker, we provide you a draft finding that you can decide whether you wanna fully agree with or not.
Okay, but even just that statement, like staff will support the CDRC.
We can put it, you know where it would go in the procedures manual.
Yeah, perfect. Just some tie-in. so that we-
Okay, so we can draft us a blurb, it might even be in, let's see. In the procedures manual, and then bring it back for the CDRC to say yea or nay on how we can incorporate it into the procedure. Does that work?
Any additional questions? Comments? If not, we can move forward to item number 2, and we are at 2:15. The next, let's move on to agenda item number 2, April Bingham as the community representative. Would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, I'll introduce the item. So we have, owner Alexis Ganes. Applicant Timothy Pond, PLN 2024-00045. The location is Isabella Avenue in El Granada with assessor parcel 047192060. This is consideration of a design review permit recommendation to allow for the construction of a new 3,565 square foot, 4-story, single-family residence and a detached 539 square foot accessory dwelling unit with an attached 256 square foot garage on a 7,800 square foot legal parcel. Certificate of compliance, BLN 2024-00133, associated with a staff level grading permit. The project includes 610 cubic yards of grading, 588 cubic yards of cut, and 22 cubic yards of fill, and no tree removal. The CDRC will not render a decision, but will make a recommendation regarding the project's compliance with design review standards. The ADU is a ministerial project and does not require review by the CDRC. Planning staff will render a decision on the design review permit and grading permit at a later date. The project is not appealable to the California Coastal Commission. Application was deemed complete September 30th, 2024.
Thank you, and I do see the applicant representative present. If you'd like to come forward and discuss any of the design elements with the CDRC.
Can I get, control board
Yes, would you like to?
or,
Or through your laptop?
yeah,
Are you logged in through the meeting?
yeah, yeah. my-
Okay, let me do that for you here.
So first of all, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a very nice day in El Granada, and I'm happy to just be here and be with you all and have this project to present.
Alright. It's not letting me promote you to panelist.
Main coast.
Maybe I need to stop my screen. No, I don't believe it's allowing me to. Oh,
Something's happening.
okay. It may just be a lag. We have slow internet.
Go ahead with the raise hand option. Go ahead, yes, okay.
Okay. You should have the option now to share screen. Let me stop sharing mine.
That's the button I got.
Here we go.
So this was a challenging lot. It's an up and side slope lot. It slopes up and away from the street. So the idea was to put the house back so that it would not appear basically as these wall of houses become on these downsloping lots. If you go throughout El Granada, you can see areas where these houses go straight up from the street. And the idea was to get the house back away from the street, and it would have less effect on the neighbors and maintain an open kind of feeling in the front for the ADU. It also provides for an accessible ADU. If we had to put the ADU in the backyard, there's no way we could make it accessible in any way at all. It would be completely stuffed up into a high altitude. So it is. Okay, so it is 4 stories tall, which is taller than surrounding homes. The lower floor, however, the garage is largely planted into the hill with only a little bit of it above existing grade, and that would be the lower right-hand corner. We go back to that would be this corner here. The driveway is not altogether too steep coming up here, but grade here is the driveway, and then it climbs rather rapidly here. So by the time you get to the back of the garage here, you're underground, basically. So the idea was, of course, to step it along the cross slope. Sorry, very sensitive here. The idea was to kind of angle the house to be in line with the cross slope moving up the hill, and not straight set it in, which would have created really high retaining walls on one side and low retaining walls on the other. So the idea was, if you see the contour lines, to mass the house along that contour line, along those contour lines, to keep it in line with the slope in that direction as well.
This
So
is I like this representation of it.
well, that's the uphill,
That's the uphill, yeah.
that's the uphill side.
Okay.
So we could start down in the garage, and you can see the garage is actually perpendicular to the street. So you drive right up into the garage. However, the garage has not become a major part of the design. It is set kind of low because we go into it like kind of the back cave. And you know, one of the design review standards is not to have the garage as a major architectural feature, and we definitely avoided that. And then a lot of this footage is located in this lower floor, which is circulation. So a lot of the, this is a larger house than the directly surrounding homes. But a lot of that is circulation to get up and down, to get in the house and up. And there is an elevator in the back for accessibility too. It's very important to have an accessible house, so that we plan this whole thing around that elevator and having access to all the floors. So then we move up to the second floor, which is stepped back in from the property line on, can you zoom in here? You move up to the second floor. It's stepped in from the front significantly. Its dimension is about 12 feet, I think here. It steps in from the front, following the grade up. This line is parallel to the street, but here we start seeing it turn with the grade of the hill, as the entry is also turned with the grade of the hill, running parallel to the grade. And this is basically the living area, or this is basically a bedroom area on this floor with a laundry, three bedrooms and a bath, or 2 baths on this floor. They're large, but not overly large bedrooms. And again, we have some circulation space considerations because we have to get back in here, of course. We go to the next floor. The next floor up there, the third floor, steps in from the right-hand property line 4 feet and steps back in again from the front property line, articulating up approximately at the slope of the hill. This side here is the stairwell again, it's open to below and above, and this is vaulted up. And then, so this is the main living area. Main living area has, deck and balcony out here, deck and balcony out here to provide this offset from the property line. The house actually conforms by, facade articulation rules, but it also conforms on all sides to the, design review, daylight plane of not having continuous spaces more than 25 feet with a 20 feet with a 45-degree angle off the top. So all sides of this building comply with the, daylight plane guidelines, which are only required to have two. Again, we did use facade articulation as the design compliance method. So then you go to the top floor, which is the master bedroom, and it steps back again from that right-hand side, I think 8 feet there. And then it has a roof over this side, and there's a master bedroom suite up there. And then on the very top, there's a small roof deck on the back of the house with the roof in front of it and solar panels. So this is the ADU. I know we're not supposed to discuss it. It's a small kind of minimalist ADU with a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. It's also punched into the hill pretty good. You can see the back retaining wall is about 6 feet high at the section right here. It's only at full height out of the ground on the very front. So this is a rendering. It's not quite accurate because I'm not that good. The hill actually climbs up and goes straight. Zoom up here. This is a rendering showing the colors. The hill goes up here, but it also comes up on this side and it goes straight across. There's not like this looming rock here, so I was struggling with my rendering a little bit. And there's the front elevation. So you can see we've got a good line going down this side where it steps up. This neighbor here is rather close, but well to the front of the property. If we would have brought the house forward, it would have been severely looming over their house. So pushing it back keeps the house separate as much as possible. These bedrooms are separated by 20, 30 feet from the wall. If we built the whole house forward, it'd be, like a lot of houses in El Dorado, 5 to 15 feet apart. This way, these rooms are 20, 30 feet away from adjacent structures. This is the side that steps in on the downhill side, right side of the property. The garage is down here. Here's the grade. Here's our maximum building height. We're well below the maximum building height on both sides. In the very center of the building, it approaches the maximum building height on this eave right here. Otherwise, the rest of the building is well under the building height of 28 feet. In the very center of the building, you can see in the section that this facial line here approaches it. And I can show you that on the section. But you can see on this is the uphill side. Again, it doesn't look very massive. It's got, it's following. If you take this line and bring it down, it actually steps down faster than the grade. This is our 28-foot height limit. And this is the back of the building. Again, it's well articulated with decks. There's no looming faces that are more than 20 feet tall. These are the section drawings. So again, as the building is large, it is stepped back into the hill, and there is language in the design review manual about buildings that are larger in scale than surrounding homes being articulated, and that being an acceptable measure of mitigation for such a situation where you have a larger home. And there are a lot of, the house next to it is one of the Moyers and Greens houses. It's an old house, but there are larger houses in the neighborhood, and I have some pictures of some that I can show that are roughly configured the same. I'll just, so then let's see if I covered everything. Okay, so I think I've covered everything about in my articulations or my compliance statement that was included in the application. I don't know if you guys read that. I can show some pictures of. Go back to my Zoom meeting. Share. Oh, please.
Yeah, he said. It's at the moment, but it's not at all. Oh, yeah.
Okay, hearing has failed to start, when you selected is invalid. Okay. Well, I had some pictures of some. No, it's not letting me share my Google screen. Anyway, if you go throughout El Dorado, you'll see similarly designed homes. I actually have the material board here. They actually wanted a tip where I got the tile from, at the tile store. Anyway. The entry, that's not gonna work. This is the stone around the entry, this is the stucco color. And we're using a wrought iron, which is the Benjamin Moore color, and a dull, not dull, but, non-glossy, dark roof color. Which will be covered by solar panels. So I think that's about all I have for today.
Okay, do any of the committee members have clarifying questions?
I think he answered all the ones I had.
It looked like the driveway is marked as having permeable pavers.
Yes.
I just wanna make that clarification. I believe the rendering shows more of like an asphalt. But just for the record.
Yeah, it's permeable. We tried to keep all the existing topography on the lot as it is. All the natural grades are maintained on all the corners except at the entry on the left-hand side of the main house. The natural grades are absolutely maintained. So finishing natural grades are maintained except where we need to do a cut to get into the house at the garage level. And the idea is not to disturb and pave and cover anything more than necessary.
Also, I didn't see a landscaping plan.
It's in there.
Is it in there?
Yeah. It's towards the top.
Oh, okay.
The natives.
Yeah.
Any additional questions?
That's it for me.
Yeah, okay. So with that, we can now open up public comment for item number 2. So the public correspondence for this project received prior to the meeting has been uploaded to the meeting webpage on the county's website and provided to the CDRC. So I have no speaker request forms in person. Next, let me go to Zoom. I have no speakers on Zoom either. I will give a few seconds in case there's anyone else that would like to raise their hand or submit a form to speak. Okay, seeing none. Chair, please indicate if you'd like to close the public comment period for this item.
Close public comment.
Okay, now we'll limit discussion between committee members, staff, and the applicant.
Maybe I'll just start. I really felt I struggled to find anything that didn't exactly meet the design standards. You did a very good job of, pointing out even where it did meet the design standard. What I really appreciate is the way that you built it into the grade of that lot. And I think you've done a very nice job of, using the landscape and building it down so that you're respectful of the neighbors on both sides. So, I mean, I don't really have anything that I can add beyond that, but I think it's very nice design.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the sighting of the building is really great. I went out there before the meeting today. It makes a lot of sense where it is. It's like I know views aren't protected, but you've protected everyone's views. Around the property, which I think is really nice. I agree, I like the way the stone sort of highlights the entry. The only comments I have are really for the color of the exterior. It seems pretty stark white to me. Especially for the large 4-story facade. I know we're breaking it up, you're breaking it up really well with the deck exposure, but I do wonder if we could.
It's not the color right there. Do you know the color of it?
It's not as white as it looks.
It's not as bright as you think.
The texture is nice.
Yeah. It doesn't look, it's not like super bright here.
It'll turn out to be moldy and green after a few years.
We'll put that in the record.
But Mochi knows I like white houses, so you would have
I
voted.
put it in the vote.
Pretty heavy.
Watch him, you don't.
I'm not allowed.
When the sun hits it. I don't know, what to say.
Also, want to commend the project for constructing the story poles. It looks like you received like 2 public comments and support.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the neighbors. really-
Well, I felt like the street view on the paper would have made it look really massive, because you could then read the elevation,
Yeah,
you know, so it did make
it's really
sense.
tucked back there.
Yeah, I think it takes advantage of the fact that I think it's El Granada, the street in the back. I don't think that's a constructible curve or whatnot, but there's houses up higher.
Right, on,
Pretty-
whatever it's
Pretty
called.
tall. Sarah.
And I've seen a number of houses. I mean, I think it fits the character of where things are kind of evolving in the neighborhood as well. Yeah.
Is there a light at the entry door?
Dark sky with planet light. They're all.
Just in the overhang there?
There will. I normally provide lighting on the outside elevations, didn't get into this iteration.
I saw on some of the other, at some of the other doors, there's lighting.
I use a Maxim Civic, it's a kind of modern looking wall hung,
Yeah, so it's on the side of that
Yeah.
entry door, just because it's blocked by the ADU there.
yeah.
Okay. And then April, what did you think about this overhanging roof deck?
Which one?
Can't really see it in the rendering, but in that front elevation, you can see it kind of just sticking out there.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah. I think the rendering doesn't do a good job of sort of illustrating what it's gonna look like from the street,
Uh-huh.
or you're sort of blocking it with that fin.
And you said solar panels on the side too,
On
right?
the
So
roof.
does it come up above?
The roof is larger than that deck, so, yeah.
But it is.
The deck is only on the back portion of the house there, the roof deck.
But it does feel kind of random with you.
Oh. Well, it is kind of sticking out when you look at it like that.
Yeah.
We could certainly knock that back a few feet if you like.
Yeah, one sec.
How far out is it?
3.5 feet.
So could we push that deck all the way back to the wall, so we don't get that extension?
I think
That'd be all right with you?
that would be That would be okay. I mean, maybe a little bit out so they can articulate the side. And waterproofing, because if the deck's right at the wall line, it's,
Yeah, like a couple inches.
yeah, like a 6-inch fascia.
That would be
detail With the,
Yeah,
Railing.
I think the like 3 foot or whatever it is, 4 foot projection is just kind of awkward from the street.
Yeah, look at, did you see this one, this elevation?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it maybe it's right to here, yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think we should make that a requirement. It's minor, but I think that helps.
okay.
But yeah. That's it.
okay,
Um. Okay. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like you're ready for-
Any other?
So push it back to the E, right?
Yeah.
6 inches max overhang from the wall, just to get some waterproofing detail on there.
Just to wrap the corner.
Yeah, give me my,
So based on the discussion, you do have the option to request that the CDRC take a vote, or based off the comments that the project be rescheduled for another meeting to address their comments. It sounds like, based off what I'm hearing, it may be just conditioned for that.
Mm.
yeah,
We can vote on them.
Yes.
Oh, we already did it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no public comment, so that's pretty quick on this one.
So I'd like to recommend that we vote to we recommend it, right? This one's not on approval.
That is correct.
Yeah, we have to vote first. or-
Yes. So provide a recommendation and then a vote.
Oh, okay.
So I would like to recommend that we recommend for approval the project based on meeting the design standards as we have discussed, including the articulation and the grading. With the recommendation that you pull back the top deck to 6 inches
From the wall.
from the wall
right,
to allow for waterproofing.
Yeah.
Was it a recommendation or a condition?
that's okay, just make it a condition.
Do you want to make a condition? So with the condition that you pull back the top deck to 6 inches from the wall for waterproofing,
Okay,
okay?
Okay, we have a motion. So with that, I will do a roll call. Moshi Porter,
Yes.
April Bingham.
Yes.
Okay, this item has passed. Next, it will be reviewed by the planning staff for a decision at a later date.
Awesome.
So we still have a couple minutes before the start of the next item, so we will take a break for 3 minutes and reconvene at 2:45. Okay, so we are back.
Back to this chair now.
I'm gonna excuse myself for this one.
Oh, okay, so do you mind if she sits in the?
You can't sit over there yet.
Can I move her back?
Yeah, yeah.
This is where it is in my speakers last.
This is Tiffany. I think this is our first EDRC meeting.
It is.
To speak on this
Planner,
end, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's begin agenda item number 3. James Bennington, would you like to introduce the item as a community representative?
Sure. So the owner is Tafera Anthony R. Trust, applicant Anthony Tafera, is that okay?
Close enough.
That's Tafera? Tafera?
Should be good for
All right, so this is filed for plan number 2024-00043. It's Magellan Avenue, Miramar. Parcel number is 048-022-370. This is consideration of a design review recommendation for the construction of a new 2,193 square foot, one-story, single-family residence with an attached 445 square foot two-car garage on an 8,800 square foot undeveloped legal parcel. Certificate of Compliance Plan 2024-0012. Associated with a hearing level grading permit and coastal development permit, the project involves 490 cubic yards of cut and 415 cubic yards of fill and no tree removal. The CDRC will not render a decision, but will make a recommendation regarding the project's compliance with design review standards. The Planning Commission public hearing on VR permit, CDP and GRD will take place after November 14th, 2024. The project is not appealable to the Coastal Commission, application being complete April 3rd, 2024. Planner is Tiffany G.
Thank you with that, and I do see the applicant's representative present, if you'd like to go over the design elements of the project.
Okay, yeah, like, single story home, 412 pitched roof. 10-foot plate. Hardy siding, a couple of different, we have plank siding, and then we also have board and batten siding. And we also have some veneer stone, on the pop outs, you can see that. It's up to, I think, 4 feet tall above ground level. And, casement style windows, white. Shingle roof. Shingle. And, other than that, just trying to get a reasonable size house on that lot that doesn't conflict with the neighbor who recently completed a large remodel on his home. And he has a very committed due east view of the water, of the ocean. And for me to do a 2-story on that lot, which is what I originally had endeavored to do, it was gonna, wipe out 70% of his view. So I came back with a single-story home, which obviously we're having to degrade the lot, so I can get underneath his balcony so that he has a clear view of the water over the top of my roof. And yeah, very highly compromised situation, but I just decided to go this direction rather than battle with him.
Showing nice consideration for your neighbors.
Well, I was 15 years younger, I probably would have gone the other way, but I'm okay, I'm at peace with this. It's not, yeah, this is only 2,200 square feet. The other house that I had spent a lot of money on designing was 3,500, so
Sure.
That's, that equates to a big number at the
Oh,
beach.
sure.
Yeah, so I don't need to tell you that.
Yeah.
But anyway. We'll learn from this experience. So, is there anything else like, pavers, permeable pavers on the driveway? And the pathways in front are all permeable pavers and then the two retaining walls are concrete with a light sand finish, plaster painted to match the house color, right, the community color of the house. And so that's about it.
Okay,
Beautiful design. I looked through it. It looks nice. I've got two small comments, Mark. Do you have anything?
Questions?
Questions?
open for questions now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I guess, could you speak to the 10-foot plate? Are you just trying to get more size out of those windows?
I do, I always like to do that. I've built a number of houses over here and anytime I've done a single story, I've always done a 10-foot plate.
Mhm.
It really adds, here again, since I wasn't able to go 2-story, all the presence that you can build in a house really helps out. And by doing a 10-foot plate over here at the beach, it's a little bit unique because you don't see typically more than 9 feet or so.
Yeah.
And 10-foot plate with like 6-foot high windows, it makes a difference.
Mhm.
So I'm just trying to add some marketability to the look,
Sure.
create a little bit more presence.
Mhm.
And so that's,
Yeah, that was my question.
I had two comments. I noticed that, even here, you can see that the guy's gonna be looking down on your roof, right?
who is that?
That's your neighbor behind you. That's Magellan, 310.
Oh, 310.
Right, the guy just due east of you.
Oh, Dewey's, yeah, he actually will be able to look over the top
Right.
of the roof.
No, I see that. The only concern I had with it was I was looking at the color. It's a pretty light color. And, I was thinking a a black charcoal or a black brown, something that still looks good with the siding might, reduce the appearance of the roof even further.
Hmm.
And then the other thing is the lighting on your application here, you show garage lights, and on the phone, you show these lights that, it's on the picture up here. They're open,
Okay,
okay? And so if we have some, what do you guys call it, night lights?
They're listed as dark sky.
they
Dark sky.
are.
Are those?
They are, yeah,
Okay, that was my two concerns.
yeah,
That's it.
they are indeed.
I think you have a beautiful design and you're getting, pretty considerate of your neighbors.
Is this thinking on the roof shingle color to match the cobblestone or is just maybe?
The color of that roof, is just been really popular. It's a great, it actually, when you see it mounted on the actual house, it's a little bit darker than that. Sometimes the computer doesn't always,
Right.
treat coloration well. It is actually a little bit darker than that. It's not black, but it is a little bit more of a prominent gray. I don't like too light of a roof color either. I want to make sure that it's leaning a little bit darker. Because if it's too light, it doesn't look right either. That particular shingle, I think would look really good with that. We could do,
Doesn't necessarily have to be black. And I'm just thinking if the color is a little darker, it's gonna shrink it a little more.
what, the next color up from this is actually gonna be.
Black.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was my question.
If you Google that particular color, gosh. It's been a while since I put this on, sorry, forgot the actual name of it. It's a landmark, which is a certain key product. But if you Google that color and you look at the house images online
Mhm.
with that color on it, you'll see that it's kind of the next under. The next under black.
Okay,
It's a pretty convincing gray, I'll say.
All right.
Yeah, it's not a, I wouldn't like it if it's shaded light, yeah,
okay.
that to me
But
would be
just
a good.
kind of in the
addition.
pictures here, the drawings, you know, they're just random.
I agree with you, and I feel the same way you do about that. If it starts trending a little bit light, yeah, you don't wanna see too much of that white peeking through, you know. But it definitely is is that the color?
Landmark
Yes,
cobblestone
There you
gray.
go, okay, well, there it is right there.
That's the color.
That's more indicative, yes.
Okay.
Of the actual
You
color.
satisfied my concern.
Yeah, and that's why I say, to go from there, the next step up is like black.
All right, well,
James, you,
go ahead.
and maybe just a quick question, the entrance, porch is, or sorry, the entrance is recessed back from the garage and, that window there, and, I don't think there's a porch there. Just maybe your thoughts, it almost looks like a side entrance.
You know, the tough thing here is getting some indentation with that entryway to kind of add a little bit of articulation. It's got about a 4-foot overhang, okay? Where the door is back from the roof line. And that indent that entryway a little bit so that it kind of feeds into the living room nicely without just being real flush, you know, wall, just a sheer wall there. Meeting the, you know, the square footage requirements or maximums and all that kind of stuff. It's just kind of, it gets a little bit tricky. But it is 4 feet behind that eave. So, you know, there's, you know, I think a reasonable amount of articulation there as far as it going underneath. And then furthermore, when I do the softening, I do a V groove in that zone to kind of distinguish it. We do the hardy soffit underneath the eaves, but when I do the front and back door, we do that out of a V groove, or a V groove, to kind of articulate that area.
That entry,
Mhm.
hey, Mark, that'll do it for you.
Oh, it's just, just a thought, I mean, just, you know. Maybe it's that particular view too.
Right, the way it
Makes
shoots
the-
at the angle instead of straight on.
Oh, it makes the front door a little,
I got you.
a bit up to you guys.
The door is 4 feet.
Yeah, I don't know. I see it, the front facade, there's no question to me where the front door is. So that's kind of what I'm going on.
Anything else, Mark? Well, if you're ready to vote on this one, or,
Or public comment
That's
first?
the comment.
oh,
Yeah.
you got somebody who wants to make a comment?
Yeah,
Once you're ready.
so we're now opening public comment for item number 3. I don't believe there's any correspondence for this item, just confirming with the project planner. Yeah, no correspondence.
No.
Okay. And we do have one person wishing to speak in person, April Bingham.
So I'm actually speaking for Judy Garvey, who is at 311 Magellan. And she would like to, and I'm gonna read out her request. She would like to request story poles so that they have a sense for how the house will be positioned on the lot and able to see the roof line. The design does not match the existing houses at the end of the street. She happens to live in the very modern home directly across from this lot. The request is that they attempt to redesign the facade or the style of the house to be more visually consistent with the house directly across the street, which is her house. It appears that they will be moving dirt, but and excavating below, but this makes it even more difficult to determine where the house sits on the lot from the coaster that is there. Requesting that if they are digging down, they can also take advantage of digging down and using the slope to increase the square footage. So she's suggesting you dig down and increase your square footage to be more consistent with their square footage. Again, this is from the neighbor at 311 Mateo.
Yeah, it kind of circles back to that compromise situation. If I built a 3,500 square foot home, which is what I originally did, because of his view, which is all due east. Okay, he doesn't really have much of a view off the front of his house. Other than the front of his balcony, he can see catty corner down to Surfers Beach from that view, but the vast majority of view, including his living room and everything else, is all kind of a due east view. It would just totally crash that view. So would I like to build a home larger? Absolutely, okay? And have fully intended to do that. This house is actually more in character with the neighborhood, I would say, certainly than her house is. I would say that her house, even though I like it, but that house is more the outlier. My house is more cottage, you know, call it what you'd like, beach cottage look, which I think is highly within character when you look at the neighborhood itself. And that's not to degrade her design, but I think my house is very conforming. Is it a little bit smaller? Absolutely. If he's okay with me blocking his view, I'll be happy to go back to the second story. 3,500.
So did you have you looked at the neighboring houses there? Are you familiar with this whole?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with the applicant. There's nothing wrong with this.
And if you would like, we can just maybe finish public comment and then bring it back for discussion based off the comments. Made,
Sure.
if that's okay, yeah. No additional comments.
I just had that one.
Put it out to the public here.
Please state your, please state your name, address, and email address for the record, and then please provide your comment.
My name is Bert Hurlbut, and I live at 330 Magellan, which is, well, probably 4 or 5 houses up the street from me. First off, to me, it looks great. And I agree that it's more is the neighborhood, I think, than the other house. So, 2, I just noticed there's no fireplace in this house.
Yes, there is.
There's no chimney though.
No chimney, just a fire, just a jet.
Okay, cool. My concern is that, the street out there is not a well-maintained street. It's not a county street. It's pretty beat up. And if we got a lot of trucks going in and out, I just see the street being just torn up and beat up. And I just like to, not let it get much worse than what it is right now. So my question is, I guess, you talk about 490 yards of cut and 415 yards of fill. So is all 490 yards gonna be taken off site?
No.
Or are you gonna store it on site?
It's gonna be just redistributed on the perimeter, not underneath the footings. but-
Okay, so you're not hauling it all and then bringing it back?
No.
Okay.
We've got a lot of slope to deal with there, and we're having to kind of rearrange things just, just to make this all work. I mean, it's gonna look good from the street, but there, as far as like the truck activity, primarily pickups, okay? Obviously, you'll have some concrete, you'll have lumber, you'll have a couple of drops. But honestly, I've built 13 houses in half of a day, and we've never had one issue with any deterioration of the streets or anything like that. We're not doing anything weird there.
Plus, doesn't, DPW has a policy of having, people video the road, and then they have, if developers cause the deterioration or damage to the street, then they would have to pay for it.
That'd be perfect. Can you get that part of the consideration?
Well, one thing, just to back up just for a minute, we have to do your standard road cuts to tap into, sewer.
No
Yeah,
problem.
Yeah.
I understand that, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just, the road is beat up and, You're gonna have concrete trucks, you know, like you said, you said that you're gonna store the dirt there, so that reduces a lot of the truck traffic. But there's still a lot of traffic gonna be going up down that street.
And just to clarify for the CDRC, they are simply reviewing based off the design review standards. So regarding your comments, maybe better address that planning commission, which would be the next public body for a final decision on this item.
Yeah, Tiffany can verify with, Department of Public Works staff whether, I know for some projects they video, whether this one or not, we can, confirm with you.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to do it too, but I would just say, I don't think you'll see any difference in the street
Okay, well,
today
if
versus.
there isn't any, that's great, there's no
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, we don't, it's not like we're gonna have tracked vehicles out there or anything like that. It's just gonna be, 30-foot flatbed trucks from the lumber yard or whatever, and there's only gonna be a few of those. There will be a truss delivery, but here again, that's gonna be on the back of a long bed truck, and, yeah, I'll say this, it just hasn't ever been an issue. And I don't anticipate, that we're not gonna do anything negligent. If we do, then obviously I would expect to have to cover it.
Thank you.
Just a comment about the demonstration and scale. It does include the, 310 Magellan and 315 Coronado. Not the house across the street. For all intents and purposes, that Magellan looks like a cul-de-sac. That's a pretty close house, but just, I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, 311 is kind of quite distance away, and it's a pretty tall house.
Anybody else in person that would like to give public comment for this item? With that, I will move on to Zoom and see if there's anyone online. Seeing none, I'll wait a couple seconds just to see if anybody else would like to raise their hand or submit a speaker request. So seeing none, Chair, please indicate if you would like to close public comment for this item.
Yes, I would.
Okay, with that, we will now limit discussion between the committee member, staff, and the applicant.
Yeah. So. The comments made by a neighbor about it not fitting in with the street. I think I disagree as well. The majority of the homes on that street are painted wood siding. With a similar scale and a similar articulation. I think the concern of the road, I'm happy to throw that in our report as a concern that was heard.
Well, it's not in our purview, right?
I know it's not in our purview, but it just doesn't
go
go
in there and say,
Yeah,
check it.
yeah, just for the record. I don't know, I would still recommend going to the planning commission, because if that is a big concern of yours, but I think judging from the level of the plans that I see here, is things like ready to build, so I defer to the applicant for any advice on that.
Can we get notified the same way for the next meeting?
Yes.
Why they quit.
Mhm.
No problem.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really have any comments.
I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah,
You ready for a vote?
um,
My vote would be accepted as is. My motion would be accepted as is.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure we're addressing the community's comments. And the last one I was remembering is the story pole comment. I feel that the density of this home in regards to the neighboring lots is pretty low, if not, yeah, in the middle on the lower side. Especially given the lot size, and I feel like that justifies in my head. Or in my view, that story pools
Not required and just.
wouldn't really add to the conversation.
You might tell her, just as a point of reference, if she looks at the top of the balcony on the house next door, okay? The top of my roof, as you can see, is slightly below that, okay, so that we're not blocking their view. You can see if you draw a straight line, it's actually, the top of my roof is only about a foot up from the floor of their balcony. Okay, so that would be a good mental image for them to look at. In terms of the actual height of the house, the finished height. So they could just use the neighbor's balcony and just kind of draw an imaginary line straight across. And that would show them, you know, the top of my roof.
Okay.
Because he said, I want to be able to sit down in my living room on the couch and be able to see blue water. So, so he's gonna be able to sit on his couch and see blue water
Um,
out that side window.
can I provide this to you?
Yeah.
I always print out a set of these plans.
And this demonstration of scale is also online on the CDRC website. Yeah.
It's online too. There you go.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any additional clarifying questions or?
Oh, no, I think this scale is, and massing is well within. And there were some considerations made for neighbors. My guess is that across the street neighbors worry about not so much the height, but the distance out towards, you know. But like we said, you know, the views are not. They're a consideration, but they're not protected. And yeah, and
I think they're protected to a certain degree by some of the standards that we have.
yeah, the standards do talk about views, but they're not.
They help, you know,
Yeah,
this-
right.
But no, it's not right, but the idea is. Yeah, these standards should be followed. It can be followed by the folks that are doing stuff. You've done a great job. You ready to vote?
So the first motion,
My motion is that we accept this design as it's been presented.
okay, next I'll do a roll call. James Bennington.
Aye.
Motion Porter.
Yes.
Okay, this motion has passed, and next this item will move forward to the planning commission. So we will wait about 2 minutes until the start of the next item.
Is that all?
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, oh, that's good.
yes.
Okay, so this project is, the owner is Benjamin and Claire Holstead, you just said it.
Yeah, I'm Ben Pulse.
Holst, I'm sorry. And the applicant is Rebecca Captain at Captain Architecture. The file number is PLN 2024-00260. The location is 1850 Sunshine Valley Road in Moss Beach, and the assessor's parcel number is 037-159-040, 037-159-050, and 037-159-060. This is a consideration of a design review permit to allow the construction of a new 659 square foot third story addition to an existing two-story, 4,037 square foot single family residence. A 129 square foot entry enclosure on the second floor, and minor remodeling of the 4,037 square foot residence on a 31,967 square foot legal parcel. No tree removal or grading is proposed. The project is not appealable to the California Coastal Commission, and the application was deemed complete October 21st, 2024. The project planner is our very own Luis.
Yes, and also for clarification, since the CRC would make a decision on this item, though it's not written into the description here, you're also being requested to make a finding that the project is exempt from CEQA for section, pursuant to section 15303 for new construction or conversion of small structures. Would you like to see the CEQA language regarding that?
Yes,
Okay,
and also any environmentally related analysis.
so for yeah, for an exempt project, it's just seeing if it meets the criteria of the exemption, and it's not subject to CEQA, the environmental review at that point.
Okay, and you have the exception language?
Yes, let me pull that up for you
Okay.
here.
And I can get that from you later, if not.
I'll pull it up on the screen. Yeah. There.
Yeah, the Zoom.
So I can read it out. Class 3, which is the section 15303. Class 3 consists of construction and location of limited numbers of new small facilities or structures, installation of small new equipment and facilities and small structures, and the conversion of existing small structures from one use to another where only minor modifications are made in the exterior of the structure. The numbers of structures described in this section are the maximum allowable on any legal parcel. Examples of this exemption include but are not limited to, and it gives a few examples, one being a one single family residence, which in this case it's existing, they're just adding to an existing residence. Oh, sorry, last one.
Cause that's for new structures.
Oh, correct.
But if,
My apologies. Yes, correct.
and it's E, which is addition.
So, correct, for the record, exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA section 15301 for existing facilities. And I will read here, class 1 consists of the operation, repair, maintenance, permitting, leasing, licensing, or minor alteration of existing public or private structures. It goes on to read, the types of existing facilities itemized below are not intended to be all inclusive of the types of projects which might fall within class 1. The key consideration is whether the project involves negligible or no expansion of use. And I will go down to E, additions to existing structures, provided that the addition will not result in an increase of more than 50% of the floor area of the structures before the addition, or 2,500 square feet, whichever is less, or 10,000 square feet if, and then it continues to give some guidance.
Was the addition itself less than 50% of the house?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so qualify.
Thanks, Camille. Next, please.
and with that, Rebecca, if you'd like to go over the design elements of the
Yeah,
project.
do you have the drawings? that I
Yes.
have here? Do you guys want a hard copy to look at?
That would be helpful, sure. Oh,
I just have them all right, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I'm
You guys
definitely
can pass it around. It's our material, that's the existing siding color, area of calcs, so, The story goes, the rest, however you want. So it's a pretty small addition, to an existing home. We're adding this third story here. And then there's some interior work, and on the second story, there's an exterior patio that's getting closed. So there's also that piece of work there. So it's kind of an ochre, warm toned house. This is the addition. Here, we're using an accent siding all the way down that part of the volume, and the existing house is T111 siding. So we definitely wanted to switch it up with something else. We explored a bunch of accent colors, but it felt a lot quieter to just keep the color and just make a textural difference. So we originally came in before the intake meeting with Camille. We had kind of an asymmetrical roof line here because we're trying to, they have solar panels already, so we're trying not to cut down on the amount of solar they can generate while we're there. But Camille made the suggestion that we break this roof line up, so we went back to just a symmetrical gable, and then we have a shed dormer over the bedroom, so that breaks up the roof line in the rear, which is the opposite of what we're saying
Oh,
here,
is
but on
that-
this side.
It's that
So
box,
the two side portions are.
Yes, the two side portions, and if you go to a 3.0, not the color ones, you can see all four elevations together. So actually, sorry, if you stop a second. So here's our site, big parcel, as you see, we've got 3 APNs and 30,000 square feet, so we're way under all of our limits. The house previously had this awkward sort of thing, it's on a steep hill, you come up and you go, you park here, you come up, and then this was the main entrance all the way in the back of the house. So part of the goal here was to create a more dominant front entrance on the front, and this is in the area we're enclosing to make an office. And everything is over the existing footprints, there's no expansion in any direction. And then, sorry, yeah, now I keep it scroll down, keep going. Yeah, actually, why don't you stop here for a second? So this is the first floor. The only change we're really making to the first floor is we're putting a wall here and creating kind of a mudroom, more of a entry. And then this becomes a gym. Currently, they're using this room as their primary bedroom. They've got kind of a growing family, and they're trying to let this go back to being a family room. And then if you go up to the next floor, this is the space that was previously the front door, which is becoming an office. And this is all just kind of as it was, except for adding a staircase. And then if you go up, here's our addition. So it's really just the primary bedroom suite and a little bit of a loft there. And if you keep going up. Yeah, so that's the existing elevations. And here's the proposed elevation. So there's, from the street level, if, I don't know if anyone drove by or saw the story poles, you can hardly see the story poles from the street, but if you look at the driveway, you can a little bit see this volume popping up in the back, and that's here, here's the bedroom volume, and then on the other side, you can see it comes back down. So we're using the same pitch, the same kind of primary roof form as is everywhere on the house, and then introducing a secondary roof form, which is the shed dormer here. And because of the alterations to the east facade, this kind of starts to read like a shed on this side too, even though it's really just a standard gable. I think that's pretty much a summary of the project. Let me know if there are any questions.
Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, sorry, yes, I have some stuff, that I jotted down before. Oh, yeah, I was having a little bit of trouble kind of reading the scope of work that's gonna happen with the existing floors. And you described like, so the metal enclosure, it just, can you, sorry to make you repeat stuff, but just the entrance.
I'm gonna go back to this floor is good. So, the interior work, I mean, I guess this is really an addition also, so this is kind of in CDRC purview. There's no changes to any of these walls. These are currently 3 bedrooms and they're staying, but this, what was the front entry becomes just kind of well, it becomes an office. We're keeping an entry where there was an entry because there's already the circulation up here, but it just goes into a mudroom, which was formerly like laundry pantry room. It's still pretty much laundry pantry room. We are replacing some windows.
Everything that's new is gonna be a wood clad product. We are adding lighting here and at the entry down below, and then doing some voluntary, all the sconces that are on the project will all get updated to be consistent dark sky compliant lights.
Are those things denoted on the?
Yeah,
plans?
right, so that, maybe second page has the light spec on it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Over here, and yeah, so that's the spec and that's everywhere. We are gonna be also, updating some of the paving, so there's currently, I don't know, 3 or 4 different kinds of hardscape in the house. So there's bluestone here, there's a different kind of flagstone here, there's gravel here, there's a tile here. So the idea is just we're keeping the profile of all this, we're not adding hardscape. Which is part of why we don't have any like civil drainage stuff. But we're just changing it all to be a consistent permeable quarry stone. And in that sort of creamy, warm color that complements the house.
And you also touched upon the house color as well.
Yeah.
So it's gonna maintain, from the palette, it looks like you're gonna maintain the same color, but
Yeah, they're happy with the colors of the house, and we definitely, my initial thought was that we'd wanna do an accent color for the addition. We looked at, there's dark brown, trims on the house now, so we looked at doing a dark brown, we looked at a lighter brown, we looked at like a creamy color, and then just really, everything we did really made that.
Yeah, the house definitely has that kind of cabin feel, and I understand the color, and yeah, and there is, there's the road color and the trim color as well. And I didn't feel strongly about introducing another color, which I can see. It's a pretty big existing structure.
Yeah, it would be a lot of painting or siding work where there's not much work if we.
James, you're about to chime in on something.
So are we keeping the T111 then? Is that?
We are keeping it except. This area is existing, there's not really much work there, but we're replacing with some of it.
He's really working.
No questions. I mean, I think it's worth just noting that. The photo, I think it's the 5th page of the. Demonstration of scale. Really shows what you see from the street. And I think it demonstrates that. I'm sort of inclined to advise that the owner can do whatever they want.
Because you can't see anything.
To turn around on that street takes forever. I kept going back. I finally turned on the side, neighbor street, just.
Yeah, it's a tight
Try not to
bend.
trespass. It's not stones.
So I think that's just worth noting that it's pretty varied in there and.
So I think we'll have our discussion time. I think actually okay to move to public comment and then go to discussion.
Okay. So next we will open up public comment for item number 4. I have no attendees on Zoom and no speaker request forms in person. So Chair, please indicate if you'd like to close a public comment.
Yes.
Okay, so next we'll limit discussion to committee member, staff, and the applicant.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, there wasn't any public comment received in advance of the meeting, was there?
I don't believe so. Everything was uploaded online. That is correct. No,
Okay.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, just kind of want to open with, appreciate the story polls. I don't know how you do that on an existing structure.
Well, I didn't do it myself.
Yeah, very good.
They did it in about half a day though, so.
Hopefully we don't have an NDA coming. Let's see here. So just a couple of things I jotted down that, that the. The design review, again, let's talk about second story location, in this case, it's a third story, and it is towards the back, and, you know, there's a natural stepping in the landscape, so it seems to, you know. I think the term they use there is, have some harmony with the topography there, you know, it's sloped, even though, you know, it is a large existing property on a very large existing large land. And yeah, we talked through the materials, or just, you know, the coloring of this large mass of brown, but I understand why it has that kind of chemical, especially with a lot of the trees. And, so, yeah, there's no, landscaping plan, but the description of the project talks about no, you know, tree removal or changes, so. No comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really that. The photo on that. Um. Yeah, demonstration of skill. PDF that does it for me, I mean, like. There's not much to say,
Everything in text can be pretty minimal.
yeah. I really appreciate the gesture for doing story polls because, it makes it abundantly clear that it's not gonna be meaningless.
Yeah, I looked at just the street sort of behind it, I'm not sure, but just, yeah, it's, given there's no comment. Also, I think it's sort of it back and back, but just having the story polls definitely alerts folks, right? Like this is what's gonna.
Yeah,
Yeah,
There's two houses in the back that could see or.
Yeah, so there's the one immediately next to us, and there's one at the top of it.
the one next to you is a little bit more, is that south or west facing towards the. Like,
It's southwest down the slope, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I did comment on, yeah, I had to kind of come through and figure out what was changing on the other floors. That was probably my, you know, thing that I looked at the most, but didn't have any particular concerns about those changes.
yeah, I really think it's great that you look the direction of the house, and that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it for me for discussion. I'll, ask the applicants if they would like us to take a motion or make a motion.
Wait for a vote.
Yeah, it's.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to, approve the design review permit along with the SEQA exemption
Section
classification. I don't know.
15301.
Yeah, with no, conditions or recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion, so next I'll do a roll call. Mark Dean
Yes.
and Motion Porter.
yes,
Okay, this item has passed and the CDRC's decision is appealable to the planning commission within 10 working days by filing an appeal and paying the applicable filing fee. And next we will take a recess until the next item at 3:45.
thank you.
Oh,
So let it, city RC meeting is back. Let us now move on to agenda item number 5, the story poll discussion, and this is a continued from the October meeting. Anyone that would like to begin the discussion, please feel free.
Okay, should I summarize a little bit?
I think that'd be good.
Yeah, and then I sent in like a little presentation.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that, okay, just, this is, I'll say a little bit of a continuance from the last meeting, where we really kind of talked about what's next. Camille did let us know, that, you know, with the design review guidelines, modific, or just revamp, update, if you will, that rather than looking at, getting, an ordinance from the county, that it would be, the more direct path forward would be to get some language added into our design review guidelines. And, a big part of that's, Katie, and actually you guys can come forward. You can sit around the table if you want, it's gonna be a discussion. Katie mentioned like, hey, you know, back in 2020, you know, we talked about this stuff, we brought up a lot of concerns. And really kind of, there's a whole project plan that was built out, or a proposed project plan, but it seemed to be kind of in discussions or in the planning department. Kind of maybe, I wouldn't say stalled, but probably didn't gain much momentum. So in a lot of ways, the discussions that we've been having the last year or so might have been a rehash or retread of that discussion. So that said, we were talking for a while and we got to a point where, you know, should we take a vote? And the vote, I believe landed like, was it 4 towards, yes, requiring story polls, and then 2 for the no, let's not require story polls, with one of those 2 being April, stating that, hey, if we can kind of take something away, then yeah, you know, I can be moved off my position about not requiring story polls. So I'll pause there. I mean, just, that's my recollection of that. And, okay, sorry, one more thing, the idea was that to continue the discussion forward, you know, I don't know if I necessarily call this a subcommittee, but we would, you know, we can't discuss this offline, so we're gonna discuss it at the next design review committee meeting, which is today. Katie was very gracious to be able to join us for this as well. I think probably to see it through, to drive it to conclusion as best as we can. So since that point, the planning group, I think, has a proposal for us as to what that would look like in the design review guidelines. And that's what I saw in the email. So we'll probably cover that at some point. And it sounds like Moshi also has a presentation too. So just maybe taking a pulse here. Go through, you know, Moshi's presentation and then the story poll proposal, I think, from staff, or should we first have a discussion?
I think that's a good course of action.
Yeah.
The presentation first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I was sort of thinking last meeting and just talking about it, that there's an opportunity now to get something in writing for story poll requirements. And I think what made the most sense to me was just thinking about different projects and what we see. If someone comes in with a tiny project on a big piece of land, are they required to do a story poll, like the one we just saw, for example? Or in the opposite side, someone, say we don't have the story poll regulation, someone's proposing a 3 or 4 story building on a tight lot. We don't get the story polls in that scenario. And so just thinking about like what would make sense as a delineation of where you would have story poles required and have story poles not required. And I took a look at, I pulled 9 projects, just kind of at random. And was using the FAR allowable and FAR proposed to create a percentage. So the proposed FAR for this project, for example, was 0.3 or 30%. An allowable FAR for this project was 53% or 0.53. That proposed would be about 57 of the allowable. And through taking 9 of those projects, trying to figure out what that percentage would want to be, where that would be a requirement of story poles. So this is a pretty small project on a big lot. You can see the footprint here, close to the lot that's going around here. And that's why we're coming in at around 50% of the allowable, and that would, in the delineation that I proposed, which is 70% of the maximum, would not be required for 2-story poles. And then we get to a bit larger of a project where we're coming in at around 70%, 76% of the allowable. That would be required to do the story poles. You can see the sort of mass. And so the idea of the presentation was just sort of to give a proof of the concept a little bit on like what projects we would see story poles on, what projects we wouldn't see them on. So this one's sort of bigger in scale and taller. And then we get another project. This one was on 2 lots, a smaller addition. This one's like coming at right at that 71% number, so it's like right on the edge. And then got this one in Montera. This one is pretty maxed out, so that one would have seen story poles with the 70% of allowable, if that's our transition point. This one was a smaller house on a bigger lot. So it's coming in at about 65% of the allowable. That one would not be required story poles, just given the discrepancy between the size of the lot and the size of the house. So I don't know, I was doing this, I wasn't sure if I was gonna bring it in, but it felt like it was making a lot of sense as I was putting it down. This one was about 66%, given the larger size of the lot. So that one would not be required to do story poles, just do the sort of compact nature of it. And that's to say, I think, yes, so this is the last one, is the 58%. You know, smaller house, bigger lot again. So that's to say, we don't want to review these smaller projects in relation to the design review standards, but I think in terms of the projects that would benefit, in my opinion, from having story poles on site, I think that 70% of the maximum FAR number was playing out to make a lot of sense to me. But I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, it's the way I guess it makes a lot of sense to me to designate some kind of FAR limit. And I'm interested if anyone else thinks that 70% seems higher or lower than they were thinking.
Is this a less formal hearing? I can speak freely.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
It's a
you're on
discussion.
the,
We're in
Yeah.
subcommittee land.
yeah, that's my recommendation here. I would also like just to address that, you know, we we'll need to find a time for public input for this, this is agenda items, so
Mhm.
it sounds like it would make sense for us to have an initial discussion and then have, leave room for public comment.
Yes.
And then
So my subcommittee or my public comment?
your sub.
Okay.
But yeah.
I just wanted to share thoughts that are sort of counter argument, because we've talked a little bit about like percentage or like square footage thresholds that would trigger it. I think this slide is actually a good example of one reason that I would be a little bit hesitant to go with like a simple percentage of FAR. If you look at a project like this, where, you know, they're staying under the threshold you're imagining, but all of it is front loaded and it's the full width of the buildable envelope. The intention of the story poles is mass and scale. So if all the mass and scale is lumped on one part of the parcel, then the FAR isn't really reflecting that. So that would be my hesitation for using that as the purely yes, no, for when story poles would make sense for a project.
Or I would maybe a counter to maybe a kind of a in between would be if that threshold was potentially lower and just one of the thresholds too, right? Like cause I think that to me, you know, height, just an overall height from grade would be another threshold that I think would, you know, if it's. We don't want to overcomplicate it, but I get, cause what you're talking about speaks purely to mass and scale, right? Like just FAR.
But it doesn't speak to the vertical mass as much,
Right.
Yeah.
because it's, you know, you can do 10-foot plates. It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely talked about a lot of different, we tried to really kind of like digest a lot of different approaches for when it makes sense and doesn't make sense, and we had talked about like maybe first floor additions. It doesn't make as much sense, and maybe second story additions it does, or, you know, you could talk about the visibility of those additions too, like if you have a big first floor addition, but it's all at the back of the house and it's not visible from the street. So I think that it's kind of tough because I think that the zoning standards create the buildable envelope. And that's already meant to be something that sort of like establishes the density in the area. And so the whole reason for story poles and for design guidelines is to be addressing something that's outside of those zoning standards. So the zoning standards aren't really reflecting mass and scale, and they're not reflecting articulation and all of the different things that are the reasons why, you know, design guidelines are intended to kind of help with the visual bulk of a project. And so I'm not saying I know the answer, but I'm kind of like trying to analyze it from the whole, like, you know, what's the difference between the buildable envelope and the design guidelines, and something that, you know, ultimately the story poles are to evaluate mass and scale, which is subjective.
But Katie, maybe to play devil's advocate, would there be a FAR that you feel like would be you know, like if it got to a certain point, you know?
I think it's a little too complicated, and it might be because I work on these projects all the time, but for instance, what if you have a house that's already almost maxed out the FAR, and they're doing a small addition, and then they cross over that threshold, then it doesn't make sense. So it's like, there's so many different scenarios that have to be considered.
I think to counter that, I think it wouldn't make sense, because they already have a huge house. So,
Yeah, that's true. So they're increasing an already large,
yeah,
potentially
so
large. mass
maybe
scale.
everyone in the neighborhood's already like, it's pretty big, like, why are they more?
Yeah, that's true.
I guess to go back to this sort of kind of thing is, I think the way I see it, under the threshold is kind of just where we're at now, like, you still have a choice to do story poles.
Well, we'd say in the demonstration of scale that you're, the.
But you're not
extends
required to.
Small homes, ground floor additions, like that one.
There's a
did
square
the
footage
greenhouses
threshold.
now,
Yeah,
like,
but just to say, you know, like, when someone comes in now, it's not required for any project.
right.
Technically, so I guess in an effort to sort of appeal to some of the to April,
It was John Steffen.
and John Seven.
Like once a year to give an opinion.
He makes a good point.
No, it's true. He does get good points.
I think, I agree, though, I think some of the projects that we see that are, you know, a tiny cabin on a big piece of property, they don't need to see story poles. But I think if we are going to require them, I think starting at the bulkier buildings on smaller lots makes a lot of sense to me.
What if it was coming at that same idea from the other end where, like, for instance, new construction projects always require storage pools unless they are under this threshold of FAR?
Mhm.
Maybe it's the exemption rather than the trigger.
Mhm.
Because what I keep coming back to is that big picture, this was not an issue at all until it became known that this was a policy and not a requirement. When everybody thought it was a requirement, I don't know that everybody was complete. And, you know, I'm not saying that you should just do the things the way they were done in the past because there was a problem in the past, but, you know, sometimes I think that we get a lot of cooks in the kitchen and we overcomplicate it, and even just trying to figure out triggers and thresholds, it does kind of add complication to the process. It makes it harder for people to understand.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same, like, where FAR just talks about overall volume, it's how the volume is distributed, and, like, say you could have like projects just to come in with like huge roofs, you know, like really built up roofs. And
But I'm not, like, we're not saying don't, like, we can see a project like that in the committee and be like, well, that doesn't work with all the other standards that we have.
no, I guess what I'm saying is like, they could be under their 70%, but have a humongous roof and still have a humongous, like, kind of like mass, because the roof, the attic doesn't count as a FAR. So, I'm just saying, it's like, it's more, not just total volume, but how like the volume is distributed, like to your point, like in the front.
Yeah, but, you know, at the same time, this may be like a, what do you got, 80-20 rule or whatever, like, yeah, you're gonna have the exceptions, you're gonna have those things, but anything that could kind of, you know, if you're a builder and you're like, hey, if we stay under this FAR, we're not gonna use story poles, then that's probably not gonna be a decision maker, right?
Yeah.
But if it encourages them to build kind of like a house like 80 or scale in a neighborhood, that would be a positive.
And then.
Community comment?
Mhm. Oh, wait, we need to open it to public comment to do that? We do.
I'm fine making this, just, I mean,
Or just one last comment,
Yeah, we can.
with the upslope plots that dig into the hill.
Right.
Like,
So-
most of the volume is gonna be below grade.
Mhm.
So, like, I don't know even how story homes are constructed, where it's like, where half the house is under grade.
it's above grade.
They still know what the.
Just about 3 days.
Okay, they would just have to do some
They just gotta-
subtraction
Yeah.
of mass and then just try to present it on top, because I don't know if you wanna exempt that, because,
I don't think so.
No.
That makes sense to include, to me, at least.
Hey, Rebecca, you wanna-
Oh, thanks. I was just gonna say, I like what Katie is suggesting, that the story poles, the language be that it's a requirement and that there are exemptions for smaller projects from the requirements. And I know it gets complicated, but I think maybe there need to be, you know, 3 or 4 factors, like FAR could be one of them, new versus addition could be one of them. It seems to me perfectly reasonable that any new house over 16 feet tall, which is like a metric that the county uses for certain things, maybe would require them. With additions, yeah, I mean, it'd be great if there was something that worked. Of course, there's not gonna be like one line that works for everything, but maybe a combination of maybe percentage being added to existing and FAR, and like, maybe there's 3 metrics or something and a couple of different ways to get the exemption. I don't know exactly how to calibrate those, but I do think your FAR suggestion makes a lot of sense to me, but of course, like, there's a number of different projects that we can come in and be like, well,
Yeah,
you know, so maybe there's just like a couple of factors.
So we probably don't have to like come up with all that here, right? We can make the, we can suggest the staff go back and can make this, but I do acknowledge sometimes that, the clarity, I think, I mean, for me, what's driving a lot of this is just, relations with neighbors and that's not necessarily just about mass and bulk. And it's, a lot of it's just about signaling and notification in a way. And, I think in that vein, for the good of the project as well, you know, there's some value there, where you just don't start off on the wrong foot with the, you know, with the neighbors assuming you're trying to skirt a project through or not notify or whatever else, right? And so perception, yeah, I mean, it adds to the cost of the project, and that's the complexity, but I do wonder if there is like a net, you know, positive for builders overall. But I do understand that it is just yet one more thing to do.
I think you have to keep it really simple. It'd be hard enough to go to the planning commission with something like that when it's, they already have trouble with this board anyway. It's gonna have, it would have to be like 2 stories or greater. Or I don't even know how, I wouldn't think that there'd be any other.
I mean,
Well,
we
what
did,
else
we
are
did
you
kind of already
doing?
do this, and we did write a
I
letter.
know, we've done it all, but you gotta keep it simple. If you
I think
start
we have
making
it pretty
equations
simple.
into it.
Like, what does everybody that's on the committee now think about the work that was done, that was already, like, we got to the stopping point because we gave it to the board of supervisors, and then we were told at that point that there was no room in the work plan for like the next 2 years to work on it, and that, you know, all of these bureaucratic steps had to be happen. We have to do public noticing, we have to, you know, gather a whole bunch of, you know, like outreach and have, you know, formal sessions so that everybody has a voice in this. So that's kind of like why it got to a stopping point. What do you guys think about what was the work that was done previously?
But that was just like a requirement for story poles, right?
It actually. had
No, there were
analysis,
exemptions,
Yeah.
yeah.
It had that kind of like exemption.
If you want to,
analysis.
you can maybe put it up on the screen, I mean,
No,
it wasn't that long.
Here's where I think the policymakers are sitting right now, and there is a belief that is pervasive that it is hard enough to build in California, that we're going to start creating all of these laws that allow you to go around the existing laws. So for example, you can now build an ADU on your property as a ministerial project. And there are a number of bills sitting in the legislature that are designed to go around all of this bureaucracy. And I think there's nothing that you're gonna say unless it's super simple and you're willing to take something else away that's gonna go through the supervisor's office and get passed, because there's a general sentiment that it's like too much bureaucracy as it is, and adding another rule and another law and another impediment to building is not reasonable at this time. And we have a major housing shortage.
Yeah, I was gonna respond to that, and I think, you know, like maybe one difference here is that we're not looking to go to the, you know, our supervisor for an ordinance change, but adding language. I think this is a real opportunity to get language included in the design review guidelines.
Well, it's an ordinance change. It'd be,
It would become an ordinance rather than a policy.
yeah, or else there's no
Okay,
change,
so
and we're
that's
back to
still-
where we were.
And is that driven by the staff, or is that us, you know, reaching out to?
No, we are already doing the design review regulations update to make the standards more objective. If, in response to all these state laws that basically says, like
housing
for SB 9 and SB 35, only objective standards are enforceable, not subjective standards, and as you know, like a lot of the state laws are subjective. So that's we're already updating the regulations, so this is a good time, because Katie was saying like, oh, not for the next 2 years, there's just no time to put staff on this design review update. So now it's been more than 2 years.
It's been 2 years now.
We're ready to take it on. And we can
Now
make
the whole
it,
committee's on.
we can make it law by actually putting it in. I actually ran it past the director. He's open to putting it in the actual law.
Okay,
Design review
so-
regulations.
so it sounds like that work stream is it's kind of back on the table in progress to make it an ordinance, but kind of driven by work that the staff.
If there's enough, I mean,
Support.
there's even disagreement among the CRC. So if there's enough like public, I guess, agreement about it, you know, I don't know that we want to put something in there that's like a complete lightning rod. Maybe it is a lightning rod, but, you know, I'm really interested in where you guys land, because you guys are kind of like a slice of the public, and it's, you know, even within this group, there's a little bit of.
Not much,
Yeah, that's,
not in percentage.
5-2. We're at 5-2 right now.
I'm just saying, it's like, it's not
I'm just saying
unanimous
too.
here.
I mean,
it's not a consensus.
we did all this work, we had a full agreement before,
Well, I
we got stopped, I don't.
I just want to hear where you land, because actually it's good to have a little disagreement, because it pushes you to a more reasonable solution.
I don't disagree with you giving a little bit of something, but it doesn't make sense to make it more complicated.
Agree. I think if
Because
you
it
put
just-
it in, it's
Just
super
simple as
simple.
possible.
Because like you said, people call them subjective objectives, and it's like, to me, it's very clear. And you just, if you wanna call something else, you can, and you can make all the arguments you want about stuff, but when it was considered an ordinance, we just did it. It wasn't anything, it doesn't stop any housing from.
And people are still gonna say it's inaccurate, but it's like, we're not taking 20
Yeah, that's,
We're not-
steps to.
you can't solve
You
everything.
don't have to draw all the.
Yeah.
all these things.
People said
It's
it's,
a
they're
simple-
dangerous, people said,
Yeah, it's none of that.
Yeah, and I just think to Katie's point, like, since it's been a policy, it's just, we're talking about it a lot, where maybe prior to that, it wasn't. Yeah, good.
You know, one of the things we could do is we have a 5-2 thing and
5-1 now.
5-1 now. Well, we can draw that up as far as what we want. And then we can, the people that disagree, they can write a disagreement on it. Or maybe we define it and then everyone on this board makes a little notation about how they feel about it. I don't
you
know.
know, I think it would be a draft would be up for discussion, and then, you know, we'll see how John and you both feel about the draft, and we can, but the thing is, it's still a draft until we take it through the full public process. This is just a draft that you're presenting to
Right.
staff, for staff to incorporate into larger draft of the design review update. So then it'll go for public comment.
What is,
Yeah.
what is that consist of?
It first
A
goes
public notice for
to,
hearing.
there's gonna probably be a public meeting, like a notice to everybody, larger than this,
Local or,
just mid-coast,
uh,
mid-coast. It only affects mid-coast. And then, from mid-coast, it would go to, oh, you probably have to see, maybe 2 years. And then go through, it would, then there would be a recommendation from the MCC or any comments taken from a separate workshop to the planning commission, and then the planning commission would make a recommendation to the board. And then the board would do, what it will, and then if it gets approved by the board, then we'd have to take that to the full commission. And in between there, we'd have to figure out, you know, how SQL applies, and whether we need it next.
So with that, thanks for that kind of path forward, but I really like what James is.
You know, the other way we can do it is we can just write something up and we can present it as it's already been written up. We can vote on it. We can say, listen, 5 of the members want it, 2 of them don't. This is our recommendation based on our majority. That's the other way of doing it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure it has to be a consensus on this committee to push it forward.
yeah, and like Camille said, maybe it's better that it's not a consensus, right? It's sort of balancing in. a lot of
Yeah,
different
it's a
perspectives.
representation of how people feel.
So, you know, I started a draft, but it didn't reference the work from a couple of years ago. Maybe that gets kind of rewritten where it's, you know, we recommend, or, you know, with the whatever, 5-2 or 5-1, we recommend this course of action that was described in 2020, and just reference that and say that the planning commission or the planning staff, you know, continue that work on the ordinance, and then we can circulate that, you know, we can add like almost like Supreme Court, like dissenting opinion or whatever, if folks want to chime in and just talk about that. And then,
Gives everybody a voice.
Quick question. Ultimately, if you have a handful of suggestions on what should be an exemption and what should be a trigger, who makes that decision? Yeah.
It's, well, staff puts it in the official draft with tweaks as maybe the director finds a particular part to.
the public comment, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah, it's
we
like
we decide what ends up in the public draft, and then of course the decision maker decides the actual, you know, word for word, whether they recommend approval.
I mean, you could just, how about this committee,
It goes to the
Right,
planning commission for
your
recommendation, and then it
recommendation,
goes to the board.
send in the one that we did 4 years ago.
Yeah.
You've got 2 separate bodies of CDRC with 2 different approaches, and then someone else is gonna ultimately make the decision anyway, right?
Yeah, this is just
Well,
for the
that's
draft.
the caveat, or what we could do, we have already been here too, but, so no story polls until the public wants it or the board decides it. I mean, that's, but hold to it with teeth, you know, like, if you come in and you decided not to put story polls up, and they go, well, you know, you got public comment saying we want story polls, you'll have to come back with story.
If it's regulation,
Just make it like that, and then it's like, then you don't have to, and people don't do it, and people, and the board goes, that looks all right. Nobody's complaining, and you're there.
so you wanna guinea pig it? You're saying test run it?
I mean, we already did, because we thought for a couple of years that the CDRC.
No, I don't want to guinea pig.
Well, oh, so you just wait for it to be law and then like
No,
enforce it.
the law, that is the law, like, you don't have, well, you have to require, story polls are required if the board requires, it requires.
We're not a
The committee, yeah.
Yeah, I think the most we can do is make a recommendation, right?
To
Or
the
like a
planning,
position
to the,
to start-
to the
We can't
planning
require.
commission and board.
That's a problem we can't require.
Yeah, we don't, you guys don't have like lawmaking power.
Yeah, we had the impression though, before I moved on and did a lot more parenting, that our understanding was that if the committee did not feel that the mass and scale could be sufficiently evaluated based on what was provided, that the committee could ask for story polls to be put up, and that we could continue the project
And that's-
with that. And now, since the last couple of
That's really
meetings,
the case,
we've
yeah.
found, so I think the guinea pig is that that's what we thought at the time, and that's kind of what you're suggesting, is that actually becomes.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I didn't know that. If
I thought-
it's written like that, why
That's
can't
how it was
you?
communicated. It
why
was
can't
captured in a lot of that information.
I mean, the thing is, the standards, I mean, you have to go back to the standards where you just have to demonstrate scale, that's the only thing that's codified. So, and there might be more than one way, if truly the only way to demonstrate massive scale was through story polls, then I think you would have the legal authority to say, you must do.
Yeah.
But if there's another way, like he came in with this humongous model, or what have you, then, you know, then you can get there a different way per law.
April, you're about to. Especially.
I know, I think if I was to put anything in there, I would recommend making it just super simple, like every new construction, two-story home in the mid-coast requires story poles, everything else is exempt, like super simple.
Yeah.
Not
You'll work it
interpret,
out.
Exactly.
because I think the biggest challenge and the frustration comes from the subjectivity. And I think we have heard that consistently. And I think if you put anything in that has the level of complexity that the public can't just understand it, it wouldn't go through anyway.
Then I think we can, in that letter, write, like, include a statement like the CDRC strongly suggests that planning staff, you know, keep the exceptions, or just that language very clear, concise.
To eliminate, so.
I agree with you, it just opens it up, right? It kind of defeats the purpose of it.
Yeah,
It
defeats the
adds
purpose. I mean, but I would still like to see, and I don't know how you wanna represent this, I'd still like to see that we remove some requirements in order to put this in.
Simplify the process.
So I would like to simplify the entire process
Yeah.
in order to do this.
And we never did close public comment in case there is any other public comment that would like to be made.
Well, does that include like, eliminating the requirement for smaller projects?
Yes,
Can I suggest something that we can remove?
yeah,
The historic evaluation that's suddenly being requested on
That
projects.
stays long.
Can we remove it?
No.
We can, this is our recommendation letter, right? I mean, we could suggest things like that,
It's state law.
I know you'll probably ignore, but.
I
But
mean,
we
if it's
could-
county law, we can only change county law, how are we gonna change state law? That's sequel, that's kind of sequel. If it's a discretionary permit and you're demoing a house, we have, and it's 50 years old, we have to.
Oh, this was even for an addition to a house that
What
was,
is-
Yeah, but yeah, right,
Like,
like additions
almost-
as well.
almost everything is 50 years or older.
I know, it's true.
And-
And very
and
little
it's
of it is
expensive.
historically
Most of
significant.
it's crap, and it's
It's
really
true.
expensive, and it takes
What?
like the wait list.
They were
for
very-
these.
Catch me up on that?
yeah, I'm 50, so anything built in 1970 was a piece of shit.
All fall apart.
Oh, 50%.
So there's a historic evaluation report that has to be created by an architectural historian, proving that nothing historic has taken place at the property, so the house that I had go through recently on Avenue Portola, we were able to actually get an exemption. I think my client just like, she asked the right questions or talked to the right people, and they were able to say, okay, yeah, you don't need it for this project, but because the house was old enough, technically, we were supposed to do this thing, and it was gonna cost like $5,000, and it was gonna add months of us waiting for the architectural historian to be able to do it. And almost all of the houses on the peninsula and the mid-coast fall into that age category. I mean,
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
It's the look of it, like architecturally significant, and then it's also like if the historical event occurred, which we wouldn't be able to tell if this
Like,
very normal looking.
If
house
somebody
had
in Fort
four
Kent drinks at your house.
Yeah, like the first
50
guy
years ago.
or the. Some,
Somebody's gotta go research the history to find out if like Charlie Chaplin ever hung out of your house. Like, I don't know. It's a little ridiculous. Honestly, I'm curious when that went into law, because at that point, like, maybe 50 years ago, at that point, those houses were architecturally more significant.
there's a loophole around.
But
it.
anyway,
I'll
that
share with you.
that's what I would like to request be removed.
But maybe there is there is some county things that we can think about in addition.
Yeah, it's a long process.
Can you make suggestions for that?
Can I?
For things that are up for grabs?
There's the pre-app, there's,
Well, the pre-app kind of helps the application.
that's
seem better.
required.
Yeah.
Should it be required? I don't know. And then there's a submittal checklist goes on, but in a way that's good for us too. That's good for you all too.
Yeah, I would just, caution that I think sometimes there's unintended effects, like you remove a requirement and then kind of cause, kind of like removing story poles.
Yeah.
You know, not.
In the public they were relying on some.
Yeah, and when it served a purpose that maybe wasn't quite as. But, you know, just to kind of summarize, where we're at.
We can make more exemptions, so there's a list of exemptions here that are up to 150 square feet addition, but maybe the CDRC can expand that exemption, where there's fewer things that come to CDRC. Then
Maybe
maybe simplify the process.
Maybe it's 500 square feet, like
The
the.
base side's 500.
Well, you know, it had something happen not too
I
long
like that
ago,
idea.
where there were some houses built on one street, and then their application came in for an ADU on top of all of them after they've been maxed out. All right,
Yeah.
and so those are the kind of things that we have to be careful about when it comes to simplifying this to lot. Because it was a workaround. They were able to max out the square footage on the first floor and then add some more, and they're actually over. You know, now they're way over. Say,
That's gonna happen more and more, the more you make it hard.
well, I don't agree with that, but I gotta get going. So I'll let you guys talk
Thanks,
about it.
Jim.
Okay.
Thank
you.
I think, this is not a motion, but I think where we're kind of landing with things is that, to move forward with, you know, drafting a letter, that one references, the previous work that was done in 2020, and also, you know, that the case then, and also, you know, make this recommendation towards the planning committee. We can talk about the, you know, the voting, how we voted. I think there's a thought here that we want to emphasize that, that it be very clear and concise with not a lot
It'd be
of.
best if you could drop
What's that?
it'd be best, because
Yeah.
you said you were already working on something, but it didn't incorporate some of this past work.
Yeah.
If
so-
you guys can like merge and simplify and merge and simplify and bring it back here, and then people can vote on whether to pass this along to the county planning.
But
And
we're
then
not allowed to merge and simplify off record. It has to be like
subcommittees.
subcommittee, right?
It's
I
just
know, I
this
think we can bring a
page,
draft back, so we can be.
Yeah, exactly.
it's just this page 25, right? It's the. back here.
So I've got like 3 sort of summary thoughts, and then I'll probably just kind of stay out of it, because I've spent a lot of years working on this, but, I think that the 500 square foot threshold makes more sense than 150, both for triggering design review. And I think it, just considering like whole numbers, but that's the trigger for having to pay school impact fees too. So I think that square footage, maybe for an addition or new construction that's 500 square feet or more, triggers design review. And then that also would be the same trigger for story poles then, right? That's simple.
Mm.
So you can
I would
piggyback.
say, I mean,
unless it's on the first floor, like we were kind of like one-story additions.
yes.
The max scale was one
One
story.
story and accept.
Or maybe it's the 16-foot height, I don't know, whatever, but like something simple like that. But what I wanted to suggest is, we had this one letter that was put together previously. If this is going to be something that's incorporated into updated design guidelines, then I think that it could be something in the guidelines that says all of these guidelines apply if your project, adds or creates 500 more square feet of, I don't think it matters if it's conditioned or not, maybe it has to be lot coverage, because then you're talking 18 inches above, whatever. So that's in there, and then there's a separate supporting document that describes story poles and what's required, and that's where we would get into some of the detail that we had worked out on trying to make sure that they were actually representative without having to be certified by a surveyor. So we had mentioned getting like a cloth measuring tape, they tape it to the biggest peak. And then you can visually see and confirm, they take a picture of it, they send it to the planner, just like they do to show the story poles are up. You can see that it's the height that it's supposed to be, but also the materials. That was something that we got into because we had projects where they had those flags that flapped around long enough that they broke off and they littered the neighborhood or they were causing noise. So that was something that we had worked on, trying to specify what type of materials were to be used. So I think that those should be separate documents. You keep it really simple in the guidelines that say, this is when it's required. And then if it's required, here's your handout that tells you how to do it. Go give that to your contractor.
We might also wanna look at Huffman Bays.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at a lot of them. We looked at Hillsborough, we looked at, we had a whole bunch
I
of.
mean, this makes a ton of sense.
Agreed.
This-
The only thing that we missed that we never did include is how to get them, if somebody fails, how to get them down again.
Right, because that was a concern, was that there had to be like enforcement of having them removed. Because I know that when projects were continued, if changes to the mass and scale were requested, they did not have to revise the story
It still
poles.
says that.
So at that point, maybe they can come down after the meeting.
Right. I think it says.
That's a
that.
pretty tangible hard stop, right? So that if the
I think
project is
it's-
continued and continued, it's
Other
not.
counties will require you to do that for like months, so they're just like,
Maybe through the appeals period or something.
And I think after the meeting, after the.
Yeah.
We used to just take pictures and then just use those pictures. for-
Yeah, yeah, so I mean, if
Yeah.
anybody didn't happen to see them during that period, there's still photos, but, if they have to be taken down after the hearing, since they don't have to be modified anyway.
No, I was thinking about a bond or something, that, because it's not for that scenario, it's because either people fall apart, they don't want to do, they're just left.
Mm.
I've taken down a couple for friends.
I think my old contractor used it to frame my house.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you? John said you wouldn't use those twisted things.
Yeah.
I would be,
There's a lot of blocks in it.
I would be open to approving if we change the threshold that required you to come to this meeting.
I think 150 square feet is small, I think it's on,
Way too
small.
yeah, like,
It's like a bathroom.
it's really small, I think
That's a
500 square feet makes a lot of sense.
Not even, yeah, I agree.
I always think we should go through all of our past agendas and see if between 150 and 500 and.
See which one.
I don't, you don't want an unintended effect is what I'm getting at, because it's like, you can have a very controversial project on a project that goes like 400 square feet.
But if it goes.
Yeah, but if it's above the first floor, then it triggers it.
Yeah.
So how controversial could they be with 500 square feet on the first floor if it's like conforming?
Yeah, what would they?
Maybe it has to be conforming, maybe you can't be requesting any variances or,
I just wonder, like, I don't know that the people wanting story poles are also the people not, are also the people not wanting to see, like, have any public comment, anything on,
On 150 square feet?
well, all the way up to 500.
I think that's reasonable. What other jurisdiction?
There's still-
did you-
What is size?
There's still donuts, and there's a horrible assumption, but then there's no plans, there's no meeting,
That's pretty good.
posting of the plans online. I just wonder how the public would feel, because I feel like that's, it's like you're giving something, but you're taking something away, like a big thing away.
Well, I think that's kind of the. intent
That's
a
the
little bit,
intent, that's
but-
what
I know,
at
but
the same time,
the people who want the story poles, I don't know, are the people who want like the additions to just go straight through, and like what if it totally changes like a roof line in a bad way, or what if it blocks someone's view, or what if it, You know what I mean? Like, what if it really changes the character?
I mean, realistically, that's when people are doing the loopholes anyway, and they're making it an ADU so that it doesn't have any.
Exactly, so they already have a loophole, and there are gonna be more loopholes if we don't take things
They'll
away.
still be good.
Well, you can make that recommendation. You'll, I don't know how many projects we've seen between 150 and
Why don't you
500.
go through?
It's probably a very small.
Do you have a summer intern coming that you can test?
But I think that, yeah, I'll put a note here, I mean, you can, I feel comfortable including that as, you know, in the vein of not contributing to, you know, the whole.
Is reducing regulation a bit, but putting something back that everybody thought was already
Yeah,
required.
it's
Yes.
mixing issues, right, and there's that, but, you know, if that's gonna help get.
If that's the compromise, right?
Support.
That would get me to a yes.
Hey, did we just get almost unanimous? John's not here, it's unanimous.
Yeah, I can definitely reference that, if I could do, you know, the 6-0.
I think that would be awesome. It's a basic 20 by, it's like a big shed.
Yeah, it's a big shed, so.
What, a garage? Well, it's 100 square feet.
I mean, granted, the planning staff can come back and say, because blah, 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 we can't do it, but you know, at least we're trying, right?
I mean,
You really
maybe,
can't
maybe
speak.
it's 500 square feet and 16 feet in height.
Yes.
Yeah, anything,
Can't be
if it's above 16 feet and it's still like small, then yeah, I should.
I mean, 16 feet in height is another threshold that we already have.
It's not too complex.
You're gonna run into that anyway.
I'm okay with
They're
the
gonna be going to
16
ADU
feet and
anyway.
500.
16
I'll
feels
Yeah.
kind
put
of
that
tall.
as a
Yeah.
suggestion, right?
But-
Well, it's like the peak of,
It's a peak of a roof.
peak of a roof.
Hey, so I have C2 house, can I go out 36 feet like?
In the interest of the staff that has to be here, like, it's, I mean, yeah, so
I think we
Fast
have
forward
to
is-
stop.
Design reads, there's no.
Well, it's gonna make it.
is that we draft a letter,
Section 8.
or just, I'll revise the draft, incorporate, and reference
That whole block.
this material. Looking at suggesting that, you know, simple requirements, here's a bunch of other.
There's 20 minutes and then we go to,
to- to-
then we go to.
And-
Nobody really wants my notes, right? Cause I did bring in my notebooks.
I think this-
And I was a little entertained that one of them has, this is my note on story polls from
Well, yeah, but.
December 12th, 2019. CDRC meeting story polls.
Well,
If it says
I was-
policy, we can request them, or a streetscape application, blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, I scraped my email for as much as I could easily and dumped it all on you guys, and hopefully you had some fun reading. There's been, you know, there's just been a lot of history, I think it's great having all these different perspectives and opinions to wrap into that, and, you know, sounds like we actually made a little bit of headway on finding something that everybody feels like is a good compromise.
Yeah.
Are you pretty good with it?
What?
Are you good with what we're talking about?
I'm just observing.
That's it? Did you write?
Just personally, I'd love just for our committee to have a stated, like, this is our, you know, this is our position on this. And not that we're gonna shut down future conversations, but the impression is, like, from the public is that we have this authority, or that we, like, don't agree with them that story polls are required, right? So like, it's just the. it's
That's
just
because they haven't been at the meetings hearing the committee say over and over again that they want story polls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the committee has generally been very supportive with wanting to have story polls.
I've said it every meeting.
Yeah, and we've had numbers that, we were actually tracking it for a while, every time a member requested it, or a community member. We were trying to track it because we were like, if it's not grassroots, then the county doesn't prioritize it either. We were trying to like get the voices of the community behind it too, and people just, they don't make time to speak up unless it affects them.
Looking at what Katie wrote, and I think it does need to be simplified a bit. There's stuff
Yeah.
in here
No, it's too complex.
about 1-story stuff that would still be required. and-
What I'm hearing is like 500 or less. No, nothing.
No
Nothing.
CDRC, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, story polls.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, even for
That's-
1-story?
I would say one story, I
Over
would make an exemption.
Well, I liked her 16-foot requirement because,
Yeah, it doesn't factor.
Yeah.
So can
Yeah.
we do this? Could we have Mark merge what you have with what Katie has and then simplify it for this discussion and then bring it back?
Yeah, I think it needs to be two separate documents, because I think that was capturing how story polls should be implemented in addition to when they should be required, and I think that they should be two separate. things, like one of them should be, here's the requirement, and then this should be, here's how you do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna summarize just that simple requirement and for kind of the, TLDR, like. To a certain extent, point to the prior material.
Well, that part is basically for the installers. Whoever's going to be actually putting up storage poles needs to know like what materials need to be used,
It's
how
just
you
look at the
represent. the site.
demonstration of scale memo, because it's all in there together. I don't know that it needs
It's
to be
not,
separate.
it's not,
Well,
not
I
that.
guess that's the question, is there gonna still be all the other demonstration of scale?
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah,
It's story goals.
No, I would be okay with making it just really super simple.
Yes.
Mhm.
Agreed. If you look at the demonstration of scale memo, under the story pole section, which is the first section now, not the second section, it'll tell you, what the requirements are and the construction. Like
Yeah,
what-
and
what
I wouldn't have
materials.
the option of a visual demonstration. It's just, it adds complexity.
Yep,
And
and
we
then that
have
would
the.
become part of the new updated.
You will do it.
It wouldn't be in the blue book.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking
Yeah,
about-
zoning regs, it would be in the
You will do it
separate.
there.
Okay,
That's just designer review
Yeah,
standards,
yeah.
this is more, the requirement.
it's just piggybacking on the design standards update.
It's a design review.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, I'll do that draft.
So I can burn these in?
Um,
I keep everything.
yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of wanted to. This isn't like
You're
that,
like,
the
ooh.
summary is, this is very detailed still, and like a lot of the other ordinances that were referenced, and also, I'll probably put a reference to like, like there's been some petitioning, some support on that as well, but again, it's folks who are members, but as soon as somebody becomes a builder, they're gonna have a different opinion.
So if somebody gets built next to you.
But builders will like the expansion of the exemption.
Yeah, and ultimately, part of the reason I think that the committee's feedback on this is so important is because this is one of the only parts of the process where there's like architects involved that think about the different scenarios and that have to prepare this material and can kind of give that perspective. Most of the staff don't have an architectural background, the builders don't have an architectural background, the general members of the public don't have that, so I think it helps. Some of them do, but generally most don't, so I think it's helpful to have that.
Okay, any additional comments on item 5? Either by committee members or public? If none, then we can conclude, and for the order of meeting, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, so roll call, Mark Stagmeyer, Mark Danick,
Yes.
April Bingham, and Moshe Porter.
Thank you for your-
Yes.
Okay, by this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.